I'm sending them a $10,000 bonus.
Where's that money coming from?
I don't know.
I love cows.
Well, hello.
All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Cenk, Yasmin, Aaliyah Khan with you guys. Yasmin's on Rebel headquarters. She's got her own podcast, Modern Context, as well. So everybody check out all those things out. So yes, we have a huge show. You know it, I know it, the American people know it. So we've got a lot of Epstein news. Donald Trump has done a flip-flop. He's done a flip-flop on a couple of things. He now says, oh, release the Kraken. I'm good with it. I never minded. It's amazing. It's hilarious. There's tons of MAGA guys out there right now going, no, Trump didn't mind releasing the files. Come on. All right, anyway, we're gonna get to that a little bit later. And then speaking of flip-flops, Donald Trump viciously attacks Marjorie Taylor Greene. Interesting, okay. But hey, we've got Democrats in trouble too, like Larry Summers. My God, his emails. And then who's Bubba? I mean, no one's talking about this giant elephant in the room where Donald Trump is accused in the emails, I didn't do it, the emails say it, of providing oral sex to presumably another man. That's not a big story. I think it's kind of an interesting story. So we're gonna cover it today on the show as well. And I couldn't believe it. I didn't think it was real, but it is real. I'm not saying that he did it. I'm saying that it's in the emails that he did it. All right, yes. So lots of fascinating things to get to.
Yeah, it's been a weird weekend for everyone, and now there's trouble in paradise. So let's get right into this first story.
The most hurtful thing he said, which is absolutely untrue, is he called me a traitor, and that is so extremely wrong. And those are the types of words used that can radicalize people against me and put my life in danger.
He says,
Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't think her life is in danger. Frankly, I don't think anybody cares about her.
Well, the Marjorie Taylor Greene Donald Trump breakup is official, it seems, after months of bucking some of Trump's policies and pushing for the release of the Epstein files. Marjorie Taylor Greene has found herself on the receiving end of Trump's fury, and it doesn't seem like she likes it very much. But before we get to his tirade and all of the fallout from it, Cenk, we want to hear your 2 cents.
Yeah, so Marjorie Taylor Greene's getting attacked by all sides now, except some core of certainly the populist rights backing her, and for however much we speak for the populist left, I'm not backing her entirely on all of her policies, of course, but backing her on this. And this is it. This is a fight between the people who are full of crap in the establishment, which now includes Donald Trump. I think it might have always included Donald Trump, but some think that he's new to that camp, and the populists like Marjorie Taylor Greene. So we're gonna show you all the back and forth and the threats that she's been getting. But at the end of the day, who's gonna win? And that's a super interesting conversation. If you think it's definitely Donald Trump, I don't think you see what's going on at all.
All right, so here is what Trump posted on Truth Social on Friday. He said, I am withdrawing my support and endorsement of Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and the great state of Georgia, of the great state of Georgia. Over the past few weeks, despite my creating record achievements for our country, including a total and complete victory on the shutdown, closed borders, low taxes, and no men in women's sports or transgender for everyone, and having created the hottest country anywhere in the world from being a dead country just 12 months ago and so much more, all I see wacky Marjorie do is complain. It seemed to all begin when I sent her a poll stating that she should not run for senator or governor. She was at 12% and didn't have a chance unless, of course, she had my endorsement, which she wasn't about to get. She has told many people that she is upset that I don't return her phone calls anymore. But with 219 congressmen / women, 53 US senators, 24 cabinet members, almost 200 countries, and an otherwise normal life to lead, I can't take a ranting lunatic's call every day. I understand that wonderful conservative people are thinking about primarying Marjorie in her district of Georgia, that they too are fed up with her and her antics. And if the right person runs, they will have my complete and unyielding support. She has gone far left, even doing The View with their low IQ Republican hating anchors. Oh no, not The View. Okay, so Green disputed Trump's claim that he told her not to run for the Senate and his allegation that she had been badgering him with phone calls. In response, she did release a text message that she had sent him earlier that day saying, check the flight logs of Epstein's place. Bill Clinton is on there like 26 times. Hillary too. Many of us releasing the Epstein files for many of us releasing the Epstein files has always been for the women who were victims of Jeffrey Epstein, but also because we believed that Democrat bad guys like the Clintons were entangled and involved with him. Epstein was the spider that wove the web of the deep state. Lean into it. So she guessed that text is what sent him over the edge. In response to Trump's onslaught of attacks, Marjorie Greene also wrote on X, I never thought that fighting to release the Epstein files, defending women who were victims of rape, and fighting to expose the web of rich, powerful elites would have caused this. But here we are, and it truly speaks for itself. Well, Trump shot back again. There's a lot of back and forth here, this time coming up with two of his signature nicknames for his new enemy. He said, lightweight Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, green grass turns brown when it begins to rot, betrayed the entire Republican Party when she turned left, performed poorly on the pathetic View, and became the rhino that we all know she always was. Just another fake politician, no different than Rand Paul Jr., aka Thomas Massie, who got caught being a full-fledged Republican in name only, make America great again. And then he said Marjorie Traitor Greene is a disgrace to our great Republican Party. And then that was when Marjorie Greene basically accused him of abandoning his America First positions. She posted screenshots of AIPAC trackers showing that she has taken no money from AIPAC and a Liberty scorecard that awarded her 100%. And she wrote, this and the Epstein files is why I'm being attacked by President Trump. It really makes you wonder what is in those files and who and what country is putting so much pressure on him. I forgive him. And I will pray for him to return to his original MAGA promises. And that's very big of her. Well, since he began his attacks, Greene says that she has been receiving threats of violence against her. It says the hoax pizza deliveries have started now to my house and to my family members. We also received a pipe bomb threat on my construction company's office building. President Trump's unwarranted and vicious attacks against me were a dog whistle to dangerous radicals that could lead to serious attacks on me and my family. President Trump has called me a traitor, which is absolutely untrue and horrific. Mark Levin has been calling me a traitor, and so have other prominent, likely paid social media activists. This puts blood in the water and creates a feeding frenzy, and it could ultimately lead to a harmful and even deadly outcome. But Trump voiced his doubts that anyone has actually sent her death threats since, as he claims, nobody cares about her. And this whole saga is, it's hard to wrap your head around because on one hand, you want to be like, oh, good, she's finally starting to realize who this guy is and has always been. And on the other hand, you're like, how did she not know? She must have known, and she was playing politics this whole time because her alliance with Trump and her alignment with him and his policies this whole time is the entire reason why she even has a career as a politician. She was very MAGA. She was very America First from the get-go. she came out as, a QAnon supporter even, and she made her way through all these inflammatory statements into Congress, all the way into Congress. She got reelected. Like, we've been dealing with her for a long time now, and she has been riding on the coattails of Donald Trump. Now it is very difficult, I think, Cenk, to feel sympathy for her and what she's going through. Obviously, I don't want anyone to feel threatened for their lives or for their property. I don't like the idea that she's getting death threats against her, but she was part of the coalition that was demonizing the far left and calling us radicals and calling us dangerous. But she's been on the bad side of MAGA for 2 days, and now her life is actually in danger. Now is when she's actually starting to have to look into an additional security detail. So all the propaganda that she's been spewing this whole time, maybe if this is a real turn of face for her, then maybe we can get behind that. But I just don't trust it right now, Cenk. One more thing before I toss to you. One thing that we do need to keep in mind is that the Republicans are looking forward to the Republican Party in a post-Trump era. And so it seems as though some people might be interested in separating themselves from Trump. So maybe that's another factor of what's going on here. All right, Cenk, I'm done.
Yeah, so look, the threats and the toxic language, she used it in the past as well, no question. And she did it in sometimes over the top fashion. But as we're gonna talk about a little bit later in the show, she's now apologized for that. And that's good, that's a turning point, right? You want people to go, oh, right, that was wrong. And now I'm on to doing the right thing. So I appreciate that. So is she playing politics? Guys, let's get past this. Everybody's playing politics, right? She's a politician. So then the question is, yes, but is there a core there, right? I believe, for example, Ro Khanna has a core. Bernie Sanders has a core. They believe in certain things and are not going to move off of that core, right? And so, and if they was convenient, would Bernie then turn around and be against universal health care and help health insurance companies rob Americans? No way. There's no chance he would do that. But is Bernie a politician? Yeah, he's a politician. And sometimes, things are done out of compromise, negotiation, convenience, etc. For example, his compromise with Joe Biden, which I couldn't stand. And I thought were ineffective, but yeah, that was politics, right? So, all right, now then we get to the core of who these folks are and who should we trust, right? Trump says she's just another fake politician and a rhino, right? Just another fake politician. Well, that's ironically what a lot of his base is saying about him right now. So they thought he was special and different because he appeared to be anti-establishment. And then he comes in and does the same exact things as the establishment. So who's the fake? Now, this is not really indisputable. It doesn't matter because the Trump loyalists will dispute it anyway. And I think mainstream media flips it on its head. They're constantly making it seem like Marjorie Taylor Greene is leaving MAGA. Okay, now the terms are getting confusing because everybody's claiming ownership over different terms. But in terms of the original MAGA principles, and I know that they didn't really exist for the politicians largely, right? But they did exist for the voters. The voters actually did believe them. They weren't lying, right? They really do hate corruption. And I know they picked an ironic leader for that. I got it. I've been saying that from day one. But they do hate corruption. They do want to be America first. Can anyone really dispute that? And is serving Israel loyally and demanding to give money to Israel the way to serve America first? No, of course not. Of course not. Did they really want the Epstein files released? Of course they did. Marjorie Taylor Greene wants to release them. Donald Trump doesn't. And you go down the list. They cared about inflation. Donald Trump said, I don't care about affordability. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is on the warpath on affordability. Now you could say, oh, she's doing that because of politics. Good. I want them to care about the American people for politics. All we've had for the last 40 years is politicians only caring about the donors for politics. It would be amazing, even if they were faking it, to actually try to do something for the American people and care about them first. So in terms of the original principles of MAGA, it is absolutely, utterly indisputable that Marjorie Taylor Greene is closer to those positions than Donald Trump is. So, okay, so then obviously she's more pro-MAGA, but the mainstream media is so I sometimes wonder about I don't want to say intelligence, it sounds so rude, but do they know anything about politics? Do they know what the original MAGA positions were? Do you know, if you're in mainstream media, what America first means? Do you know which country it prioritizes and which country it does not prioritize? Do you know which one is Marjorie Taylor Greene or Donald Trump is closer to that position? Do you know anything? Anything at all? Because if you know anything at all, it's super clear that Marjorie Taylor Greene is close to the original MAGA positions. By the way, half of which I totally disagree with, right? But nevertheless, she's closer to them. Okay, so now that leads to the three branches of the current Trump voters. And again, they're all lumped in together for convenient purposes for whoever's doing it, right, left, center, etc. right? No, there's three different branches at this point. So there are the independents who voted for Trump. And if you say there are no independents that voted for Trump, I don't understand what that means. Do you not understand numbers? Do you have trouble reading? No, there was a ton of independents that voted for Trump. So are those independents like pure MAGA Trump loyalists? By definition, they're not. Otherwise, they'd call themselves Republicans and they'd say they're MAGA, etc. right? So they're independents. Do those people generally listen more to like Rogan, Theo Von, Tim Dillon, and honestly, a little bit of us, etc.? Yeah, they do, okay? And so those guys, are they Trump loyalists where they're like, okay, if Trump does it, that's it. We were anti-war. I've staked the whole thing on anti-war, but even though I'm an independent, I have no loyalty to any party or any person. No, if Trump says pro-war, I'm now pro-war. That's gotta be near zero. Maybe it's 12% of the independents who voted for him, but nearly none, right? No, they went to that side because they thought that side had the answer, the anti-establishment answer, right? So those guys are definitely in play and Trump has no lock on them at all, okay? Then you've got another third, and you could argue with the thirds, you could argue with the percentages, no problem. But just as a way of thinking about it, you had another third that's original MAGA, that really is anti-war, anti-corruption, America first, etc. That's being represented these days by Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tucker Carlson, Tom Massey, etc. They are much, much, much closer to the original positions. And then you got a third, again, it could be more, but the third group in the Trump voter base are Trump loyalists. And those are the guys who are like, oh, if Trump says they're eating cats and dogs, they're eating cats and dogs, period. If Trump says that, as they literally are saying this today. Trump said, oh no, I was playing, Trump doesn't even say this actually. Trump just switched his mind, gave up, and conceded and said, okay, fine, let's release the files, right? And his loyalists come in and go, he was playing four-dimensional chess. Just like the Obama loyalists told me before. Oh yeah, he seems to be going totally corporate. It seems to be helping all of his donors, but he's playing four-dimensional chess, Cenk. And by the end of his term, we'll have everything. Higher minimum wage, paid family leave. We didn't have any of those things. Any of those things. There's no four-dimensional chess. These Trump loyalists are like, he wanted to release the files all along. That's why he was saying not to release them. Those guys are hopeless. Like, just let him drift into the political universe. Just like, Sandra Bullock in that movie, like flipping over and over and over. Like totally, you're never gonna convince them of anything. If they think that Haitian immigrants are eating cats and dogs in Ohio, they're not rational. So, but if you think that's all the Trump voters, you're nuts. That's not remotely true. So Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker are addressing in my opinion, about 2/3 of Trump voters that care more about principles and policies, including ones we disagree with, than they care about the cult of personality. So I don't know if today you did a poll. If you do a poll online, I know I've already done it. Over 66,000 votes. I asked who's the true champion of MAGA, Marjorie Taylor Greene or Donald Trump. And all the Trump loyalists came in, all of his supporters online directed people to my poll, etc. Trump went from a big deficit to a big lead. And then every real person voted and Marjorie Taylor Greene won anyway, right? But that's just online. And there's the boomers who watch Fox News, who probably now think Marjorie Taylor Greene is going on vacation with Nancy Pelosi and is like some sort of liberal or something, right? So who wins at the end? I don't know. I mean, I suspect it's Marjorie Taylor Greene, but that's what we made voting for. And I think in 26 a little bit, but then in 2028, both the Republicans, but also the Democrats, they're both of their establishment wings, including Donald Trump, are gonna get a rude awakening. At some point, people are gonna figure out what a primary is. And they're gonna go there and they're gonna realize, oh, I don't have to vote for the lesser of two evils. I don't have to vote for the other party. I just use my own party's primary and I vote out all the bums. Who are the bums? Almost all the incumbents who are swimming in donor cash. This is not complicated. And then on last thing on that, yes, is, well, so who's more corrupt? Well, Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't take AIPAC money. She, corporate PAC money, I don't know if she doesn't take any these days or very little, but she doesn't seem to be attached to it. And Donald Trump is swimming in money. 300 million from the Israeli lobby. The big oil gave him God knows how many hundreds of millions of dollars, big pharma, etc. Who's more corrupt? Not close, Donald Trump is. So I'd rather, for me personally, as far as which direction the country is gonna go, I'll take an honest populist that I disagree vehemently with on some issues over a corrupt politician any day.
Yeah, I believe that Marjorie Taylor Greene maintains that she has taken no money from AIPAC, which is something that a lot of Americans support on both sides of the aisle. That is an issue that seems to be galvanizing a lot of Americans, maybe for different reasons. We have different reasons for not wanting to support Israel, but nobody wants to support Israel anymore. And I think even the fact that our country is so beholden to Israel in a lot of ways is really just become such an eye-opening issue for so many Americans, not just about Israel specifically, but about the way that our country operates, who is in charge, who is pulling all the levers, and everything that's going on here with the United States and with the American people is really all being done in the service of a different country all the way on the other side of the world. So, but back to Marjorie Taylor Greene, she is now actually apologizing for taking part in divisive politics and political attacks for years and for not really caring about their ramifications until it impacted her personally, because that is what happens. Well, amid her fallout with Donald Trump, Greene has reportedly faced an onslaught of violent threats, and she is now saying that it's time to take the temperature of the country down. Take a look.
Congresswoman, you posted on X that President Trump is, with his comments, fueling a quote, hotbed of threats against you. Obviously, any threats to your safety are completely unacceptable. But we have seen these kinds of attacks or criticism from the president at other people. It's not new. And with respect, I haven't heard you speak out about it until it was directed at you.
Dana, I think that's fair criticism.
And Greene hasn't exactly been a stranger to political drama and inflammatory statements. I think we have another clip of her actually apologizing for her divisive politics. Let's see.
I would like to say humbly, I'm sorry for taking part in the toxic politics. It's very bad for our country, and it's been something I've thought about a lot, especially since Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Is that I'm only responsible for myself and my own words and actions. And I am committed, and I've been working on this a lot lately, to put down the knives in politics. I really just want to see people be kind to one another. And we need to figure out a new path forward that is focused on the American people, because as Americans, no matter what side of the aisle we're on, we have far more in common than we have differences. Yeah. And we need to be able to respect each other with our disagreements.
So speaking of, her own inflammatory statements, the things that she's said throughout the years that we've known her as a congressperson, she has liked and responded, for example, positively to Facebook posts calling for executing prominent Democratic politicians in 2018 and 2019 before she was elected to Congress. And when that was revealed in 2021, she was removed from House committee assignments until 2023. More recently, she got into a verbal fight with Jasmine Crockett and insulted her appearance, for which she refused to apologize. And during an argument on the House floor in 2023, Greene called Lauren Boebert a little B word. And that is all in addition to conspiracy theories that she's peddled in the past about school shootings being false flag operations and wildfires in California being started by space lasers, for example. That was a famous one of hers. But now she says that it's time for the American people to come together. Writing on X this weekend, the toxic political industrial complex thrives on ripping us all apart, but never delivers anything good for the American people, whom I love. The people in charge tell us to hate each other, fundraise off why we have to hate each other, and pit Americans against each other to the point of violence and nearing civil war. This is all so wrong. We can have our own differences and differing opinions, but we can still love and respect one another. I'm leading the way with my own example, and I hope that President Trump can do the same. I think it's naive of her to hope even that President Trump can do the same, because we know that he has been this person his whole life and he has no interest in changing who he is. But this is a very interesting moment in American history, right? We've been through the MAGA movement, a decade of MAGA / QAnon just interspersed within MAGA or maybe overlaid on top of MAGA. And right now we are starting to see some people who vehemently not only just supported Donald Trump, but participated in these divisive politics and inflammatory rhetoric. Those people are now finally, for whatever reason, whatever their particular trigger is, they are starting to come around and to say, you know what, maybe I was wrong, maybe I supported the wrong person, maybe he is not in alignment with my own views, maybe he isn't who I thought he was this entire time. And I think something that we can underestimate in this country, especially with social media and all these different online spheres and media spheres, is that people can very much get holed into a bubble and then they just tunnel down into it and they don't even realize how far they are into that hole until they finally see some light and they come out on the other side. And what's happening as all these people are starting now to come to that realization, starting to say, maybe I don't want to support Trump anymore or MAGA. The people on the left, our entire goal this whole time, especially on shows like this one, is to help people to understand our side of things and also to help them understand that we're not against them. The things that we want for this country, things like healthcare, for example, affordable housing, higher wages, et cetera. All those things we want for people who voted for Trump too. It's not just that we want it for ourselves, we want it for the entire country because we believe that these things will, raise all the ships up, right? If we get it all for us, everyone will be happier, we'll have a better, more prosperous country.
Yep.
But we are having now that is happening, we have to kind of deal with our own emotions as far as forgiveness. These people put us through hell for the last 10 years, or that's how a lot of people feel. And now we have to learn how to be accepting of them. So I think the American people are in kind of a tough spot. These next couple of years are going to be very interesting, seeing how we learn how to deal with each other and learn how to come back to a place that maybe we were at closer to 10 years ago. What are your thoughts, Cenk?
Yeah. Look, I definitely forgive. And for me, look, it's doubly frustrating, all of this entire phenomenon, because we've been getting these threats for well over a decade. And so the pizza stuff, that's already happened to us 10, 15 years ago. The swatting has happened to almost all of us, et cetera. And since I guess it doesn't actually happen to politicians or people in mainstream media that often, anytime that it happens, they're shocked by it. When we say it happens to us, they're like, who cares? You're irrelevant. Okay, you're not elite. If you're not among the elites, no one cares, right? And so that's, the establishment's view on it. And then you layer on what a lot of the radical right MAGA guys did, which is what they're doing to Marjorie Taylor Greene now. And once Donald Trump targets you, that's it. Ranging from doxing and being over the top threats, et cetera. They're threatening her son's life right now. Several different people talking specifically about murdering her son, and it just goes on, and it's vicious. And so, did she participate in some of that? Yes, she liked posts that called for violence against Democrats. That's terrible. Okay. So now, but wait a minute, I said I forgive. Why? Because guys, whenever people come in the right direction, say yes. Like that's not complicated, right? So is Trump coming in the right direction? No, hell no. He's continuing to do the same exact things he did before. The real problem is Marjorie. She's a traitor, everybody. Target her, right? So now Marjorie realizes, oh, that's what's been going on. Oh, some people, not all people, but some people on our side are a little Looney Tunes, right? And when they see Trump saying that, they go, yeah, Marjorie, when they saw you saying that, they also were animated in the same way, but she now recognizes it and has apologized for it. No, you can't ask for more than an apology. What else do you want, right? So, and look, have we been, pretty harsh in our language from time to time? Yeah, okay. So, am I dialing it back? Barely. So why? Look, guys, there's different lines, right? We have never crossed the most important line, and it's one of the most important rules we have at TYT. And I appreciate that people across the political spectrum have given us credit for this. We have always been, and I think the most consistent on any side, for nonviolence. Our whole defining trait is nonviolence. We're for peace. We're for peace in the world. We're for nonviolence in this country. My role model is Martin Luther King, civil disobedience with absolute commitment to nonviolence. So we've never crossed that line, and so we got nothing to apologize for there. On the other hand, now people are saying words like traitor and Nazi, etc., are too far, and they rile people up too much to attack others. Both sides have said Nazi a lot of times. Both sides have said traitor a lot of times. So, okay, I'll try to stay away from those, right? I'm trying to adjust. But at the same time, no, there's nothing wrong with calling Lauren Boebert a bitch. That's what Marjorie Taylor Greene did. Well, that doesn't call for violence against her. That's just like her opinion, man. And do I think Donald Trump is Israel's bitch? Yeah, and I'm gonna say that 1,000 times. Did I think Joe Biden was Israel's bitch? Yeah. So that's just being honest. That's not, well, that's nowhere, that's not within a million miles of violence. I'm just telling you what I think of the guy, right? So I think she's come a long way in going in this direction, which is the correct decision. I'll definitely take it. And I encourage everybody else to do that. And by the way, last thing on it, yes, is that Tucker Carlson and Anna did a show together the other day. We'll put it up on tyt.com/press. And they were both talking about, hey, things that they regretted. And Tucker listed a bunch of things he regretted saying. Anna said some things she regretted saying throughout the years, right? Can I pause to say that no matter what you think of Tucker Carlson or Marjorie Taylor Greene or us, by the way, that's kind of a nice moment. That's a moment of Americans going, wait a minute, maybe we're not each other's enemies. And maybe the real people in charge, the elites, are getting us to fight, and we should stop fighting each other and realize who's actually causing the problems. That's what I'm calling the Great Awakening. So I think people are beginning to realize the establishment is the real opponent, political opponent that we have. You see that? I toned it down a little bit.
Yeah, I think it goes beyond just a great moment though, Cenk. I think it's what needs to happen if we even have a hope of moving forward as a country in the post-Trump era or just any era. Like we have a lot of things that are coming for us in the coming years that we're gonna have to fight against. We have AI, we have climate change, and who else knows what else is going on the geopolitical stage, but there's a lot of things that we will need to be unified for. And as a country, we need to learn how to just apologize to each other and to realize that, all of us, we did play a role in what happened to this country. Even if we weren't vocal about it, we certainly felt, alienated from our neighbors. And that wasn't I know it's been 10 years of this, but that really wasn't an overwhelming feeling prior to the Trump era. We can blame it on Trump if you want. You can blame it on social media, whatever the case was. It's been about 10 years of this, and it's hard to remember what life was like before that. And I think if we're going to move forward, we have to be accepting of people whenever they do say, I'm going to try to be better with these things. And you apologize for the things that you've done. And as far as apologies go, Cenk, you've touched on this a little bit. That's one of the biggest criticisms that I personally have with cancel culture, is even if somebody does come out and apologizes for the thing that they've done, which is, what people say they want from these people once they've been canceled, but once they do, they're almost never forgiven, right? It's always like, oh, they didn't mean it. Oh, some PR person wrote this for you. Oh, you're just gonna nothing has changed, blah, blah, blah. You're not actually sorry. And it's like, what do you want from people, right? They have all these ideas in their heads like, oh, you have to donate to charities and you have to show, this many years of contrition, and, you have to be working against the thing that you've said. And it's also arbitrary, but we hold these people to such high standards, and we should. I'm not saying we shouldn't hold, especially politicians, more than celebrities, but it's not that we shouldn't hold them to high standards, but we do need to be open to, if you're working forward, if you're in earnest working towards something better, then great. I have to be accepting of that, and I have to a certain degree, assume that you are doing so with your best intentions. And it's hard. It's very hard because we don't trust in each other anymore. But we're gonna have to try.
Yeah, one last quick thing here. One of our members on Twitch wrote in with a good counterpoint. Canadian in Hawaii said, just to be clear, she said like 2 weeks ago, she still believes in a national divorce. Like, WTF are we even talking about here? So, brother, that's a good point, right? And so I get it. And you always have to be on your guard, especially with politicians, right? So I'm not absolving anyone of all of their, not only mistakes of the past, but their current positions, etc. I disagree with Marjorie Taylor Greene on dozens of issues, right? But she seems to be headed in the right direction. If our answer for headed it in the wrong direction and headed in the right direction is the same answer, well, that doesn't make much sense, does it? And it certainly doesn't give people much of an incentive to go in the right direction. And Yaz is right, I've seen polling where when people apologize, it barely affects the numbers at all. Generally speaking, as a country, and largely driven by our media, we're told, no, never accept an apology, they're useless. Well, then why are people apologizing? That's why you get characters like Donald Trump, who says and does the most outrageous things and never apologizes. Is that the better path? I don't think that's a better path at all. I think Yaz is totally right. Especially when you sense, look, Marjorie Taylor Greene says a lot of things that are so outrageous, she's genuine, right? So when you have someone that appears to be a little bit genuine like that, even certainly in the things that you disagree on, and even on the things you agree on, yeah, if you can't show grace there in taking an apology, then the issue's on us for not taking it, right? So for God's sake, look up, look up. The problem is the people who control our government, and it's not complicated who they are, it's the donor class. It's largely corporations and some foreign governments. It's obvious. That's your real issue, not your neighbor to the left, not your neighbor to the right. All right, we got to take a quick break here. We'll be back, and we have more of this drama for you guys, including Bubba. Who's Bubba? And what did Donald Trump do with him? So let's go to Super Chat first. In Liberty and Guns We Trust said, I voted Trump, but I'm a libertarian. I broke with him over Israel and National Guard in the streets. It's sick to hear people like Megyn Kelly try to minimize Epstein's victim's age. I can't get behind those politics. So that makes all the sense in the world. This brother signed up for a certain agenda. And when Trump's not doing that agenda, why would he stay? By the way, this is the same thing I asked my Democratic friends when people like Joe Biden almost never do anything that they promised. So what's the big wow, you got to be loyal to Biden? Why? Why? If he never gives you anything that he promised, why do you have to be loyal to him? What a weird way of thinking in my worldview. YTP Renewed says about MAGA, their movement's undefinable, just like left and right. I have some sympathy for what you're saying. What does left mean? What does right mean? What does socialist mean? The least defined word in the English language. But there were core tenets of MAGA. I mean, America first, right? Obviously. No more foreign aid. Except Israel, kind of. Now we're at the kind of part, right? Anti-war, drain the swamp, etc. Whether they were genuine about that is, an open question given the Trump loyalists, but they did have pretty well-defined core principles. A lot better than like, what does the Republican Party stand for? I don't know. Okay, I have a much better sense of what MAGA originally stood for. Rishi Patel, YouTube member, says, never thought she'd be the one to go straight at Trump. I would have guessed that. And the reason it's easy to say in hindsight, obviously, but not really in hindsight. I saw it in the middle and kind of encouraged it. Why? Because she's one of the more honest ones. Remember, when you're really angry at her, you're angry at her for being honest about things you disagree with. She's not dog whistling it, she's not hiding it. When she thinks something outrageous, she'll tell you, right? So someone honest like her or Massey is 10,000 times more likely to do it than some ass kisser like Lindsey Graham or Ted Cruz. Smiley 420 says Marjorie Taylor Greene has not changed any of her positions. She's cleared some of them up, which I don't necessarily agree with, but she stayed true to the movement. I'm not even sure that's arguable. I mean, the only people arguing it are totally clueless, ignorant mainstream media reporters and Trump loyalists who'd argue anything as long as Daddy Trump said it. No Math Dragon says, I have no trust in Democratic politicians. They will find a way to lose in 2028. Well, it's our job to prevent that, right? So we got to work together, find a great candidate, make sure they're economically populist and strong and smart and actually care about the voters and have that candidate win. So the Democratic Party isn't Joe Biden's or Nancy Pelosi's. The Democratic Party is the voters. And how can you enforce that? In the primaries. In the primaries, you get to say what the Democratic Party is all about. So show up and kick some ass in the primaries and take the party over. So, but your skepticism about Democratic leadership is obviously true. That was on Twitch. So is Green New Dealer Dragon, said, invite Dan Carlin to the power panel, the most independent of independents. Okay, we'll look into it, brother. And Galfer71 says, I love how so many people on the left. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Yasmin with you guys. Some quick notes here. First, I was in the middle of reading a comment during the social break, ran out of time. Galfer71 on Twitch wrote, I love how so many people on the left say they want change, and when people on the right actually do change, the first thought from the left is, they're lying. Okay, it's a good point, Galfer. Okay, guys, let's be a little bit more open-minded. I'm not saying, just trust and don't verify anymore. No, we're gonna verify. But when they're coming in your direction, I'm always befuddled as to why it's complicated. Okay, Brenda Jones, thank you for gifting 5 Young Turks memberships. We appreciate you. We try to give back to our audience, and one of the ways that we do that is we try to pick sponsors that actually are good for you and help you and oftentimes save money. There's a lot of scams out there, and so we turn down a ton of ads because we don't want any of that junk affecting you guys. So in this case, when you're looking for a Medicare plan, we've done our research, and Chapter seems to be the best folks to help you find the right plan for you. And a lot of times it's the plan you're on, they'll just tell you and then you'll have peace of mind. It's a 20-minute call, it's free, but on average, people save $1,100 a year. Per year, $1,100. Why? The Medicare plans are complicated. A lot of the brokers are scammers. They direct you to the plans that pay them higher commissions, and Chapter doesn't do that. That's why they're so successful now, because people have begun to realize they're the guys who are being honest with you guys, and that's why they save you so much money. So if you want, call at 707-TYT-HELP, 707 TYT help. All right, yes, what's next?
Okay, we got a lot more, so let's roll the tape.
Why were you, or why was your team encouraging Congresswoman Boebert and Congresswoman Mace to not pursue
Because we think it's bad to talk about it because it gets away from the subject of how well the Republicans are doing.
Sure, Jan. So Donald Trump has suddenly changed his tune on the release of the Epstein files again after campaigning on their release, only to refuse to release them once he was in office. Now it seems that he wants their release now that the release is kind of imminent. So he's like, oh, I'm for it. Cenk, we've got more from that clip, but after an explosive weekend, which we will discuss more in the next story, are we buying Trump's reasoning here?
Of course not. So my favorite part is the MAGA guys who have found an excuse for Donald Trump's flip-flop. That excuse is hilarious. I can't wait to share it with you guys. Let's get all the facts first.
Okay, so before we go on, let's hear the rest of what Trump had to say in that clip.
We think it's bad to talk about it because it gets away from the subject of how well the Republicans are doing. We have the greatest economy. We have the largest investment ever made in our country's history. We have all of these great things happen. We have very little inflation, whereas he had record-setting, the biggest inflation in history. All of these things are good. And when you talk about the Epstein hoax, what happens is you're not talking about how well we've done. Mr. President, and that's the whole purpose behind them. They want to waste people's time, and some of the dumber Republicans like that. Mr. President, on that subject, are we going to see? It's mostly Democrats.
So Trump was asked why just a few days ago his team was encouraging some Republicans who had signed the discharge petition for the release of the files to no longer support the release. And among Republicans, the Trump administration targeted were Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert, both of whom have long supported the files release. Both Boebert and Mace were taken into the Situation Room to discuss the release of the files. And the Situation Room, that is where only the most classified conversations typically take place. There are no cameras in there, no recording devices in there. But when asked about the use of the Situation Room for these discussions, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said, "Doesn't that show the level of transparency when we are willing to sit down with members of Congress and address their concerns?" That's what she told reporters at a press briefing. So Boebert later told reporters that she was not pressured to take her name off of the discharge petition in the meeting. And Nancy Mace had been quote unquote playing phone tag with the president for a day, which just sounds like she was ducking him. So currently no one has removed their name from the discharge petition. So now that Adelita Grijalva has finally been sworn into the House, the vote can go forward and the files will presumably be released soon afterward, whether or not Trump wants that to happen. So he wrote on Truth Social Sunday, House Republicans should vote to release the Epstein files because we have nothing to hide and it's time to move on from this Democrat hoax perpetuated by radical left lunatics in order to deflect from the great success of the Republican Party, including our recent victory on the Democrat shutdown. The post was much longer than that, but you get the gist of it. He kind of echoed the same sentiments from the clip that we showed earlier, but he did double down on that today while continuing to make the ridiculous claim that only Democrats are connected to Epstein. Take a look.
You urged House Republicans to vote in favor of this Epstein release bill they're going to vote on tomorrow. I just want to be super clear on your position. Do you want to see that pass the Senate? Would you sign that bill if it gets to your desk?
I do want to. Here's what I want. We have nothing to do with Epstein. The Democrats do. All of his friends were Democrats. I'm all for it. We've already given 50,000 pages. You do know that. But no matter what we give, it's never enough. I don't care. They can do whatever they want. We'll give them everything. Sure, I would. Let the Senate look at it. Let anybody look at it. But don't talk about it too much because honestly, I don't want to take it away from us. All I want for people to recognize the great job that I've done.
That's all he wants. He's not really asking for a whole lot. The vote on the release of the files is set to take place tomorrow. So I guess we'll find out what happens at that point. He's trying to act as though now he's always been for the release of these files. He said Epstein was only friends with Democrats. It doesn't even make any sense. We have pictures, we've seen videos of them hanging out together. He's all over those emails that were dropped. And as we've teased, we're gonna get into some of those emails and how close Trump himself seems to be with some Democrats. But before I get too far ahead of myself, Cenk, what do you make of this particular talking point that he's putting forth, that all of the Epstein stuff is just a distraction from all the great work that he's been doing? Because in a way, you could say the Epstein stuff is a distraction from all the things that the Trump administration is doing, but it's not good things that they're doing.
Yeah, that's an interesting point too. All right, so I want to break down all of his excuses because they're hilarious. It's only the Democrats on the Epstein list, he says. That's why all the people blocking their release in Congress are Republicans. You know why? Because the Republicans, they have golden hearts. These Republican politicians, they're like, I don't want my Democratic friends besmirched in any way by these Epstein files. None of us are on it, and neither is President Trump or anyone we care about or our donors. We're just trying to look out for them. But the Democrats who are all voting to release the files, they're like, we know we're in the files, but we just want you to know too. Who thinks that's plausible? Like really, like you've got comprehension issues if you think that that's possible, right? And then you look at what he's doing to the Republicans in Congress. He told them to hold strong and do not release it under any circumstance. Now he's saying, nah, forget it, release it. Then what'd you make them do all those votes where they totally screwed up their careers by voting to protect Epstein predators? God, he's the worst. If you trust him as a politician, you're an idiot. He's definitely gonna hang you out to dry. He's definitely gonna betray you. Let alone, I mean, those are the people who were voting. He put so much pressure on them. And then now that leads to the other excuse. He pulls Boebert into the Situation Room. That means it's a national security matter. He has the Attorney General and the FBI director talk to her before this vote, which is unprecedented. And he does it like, oh, you better not vote to release these files. Now he says, oh no, we're just being more transparent. How could it be more transparent? You're in the Situation Room so that no one else can find out what was said. That's kind of part of the point of the Situation Room. I mean, it's hilarious. It's the exact opposite of what is true, right? And after pressuring her that vociferously to not release it, now he says, oh yeah, you know what? I just thought maybe everybody's getting distracted from my glory. We should all be talking about my glory. And that's the only reason I was telling her to vote no. But wait, if people are getting distracted by the Epstein files, wouldn't you have told her to just vote yes and release them and then move on so that we could return to talking about your glory? None of it makes any sense. But my favorite yes is the Trump loyalist online today. They're like, no. Trump said not to release them so that later he could change his mind, seemed to be changing his mind, but it was four-dimensional chess. While you were playing checkers, he was seeming like a jackass on purpose and like a pervert predator, and if not a predator himself, a protector of all other pervert predators, so that he could fall into his trap, and then he could turn around and release the files and show that only Democrats are on them. I mean, okay, if you believe that, there's nothing I can say to you to get you to believe anything that's attached to this planet, right? So, okay, but anyone with like 2 bits of sense realizes Trump is turning around because he lost. He lost the vote. There was 4 Republicans, that's all they needed. With Grijalva coming in, there's nothing he can do to block it. Plus, we know about Bubba already, so the damage has been done. So he's like, oh yeah, I meant release it. I meant release it. That's what happened. Anyone else who thinks otherwise is hilarious.
Yeah, it's like, is Occam's razor a joke to you people? The people who are still defending all of this and all of this chess that's playing and happening right now. It really doesn't need to be this difficult, right? There was a child sex ring happening within our country and around the world. People deserve to know about it. The victims deserve to have some kind of justice. That's it. Just release the files. We know you have it. Why won't you just let us see it? And all of the excuses that they give us, it's so insulting to everyone's intelligence. The people who are still defending Trump's actions is like, why are we doing so much? Even if he is playing chess, like, why is he playing chess? Nobody else wants to play this game with him. He's just the only one playing chess with himself, which is kind of sad, in and of itself. But then also, he lost. If he's playing chess, he is losing that game. Everyone is ready, is on the same page. We're ready to go. We're ready to, like, I don't have a good chess analogy. King him. We're ready to king him.
That's checkers, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, okay, we fell into his trap. Great, release all the Epstein files. Okay, we're happy to fall into that trap.
Yeah.
And look, there are partisans, no question, Yaz, on both sides, right? And some of the partisans want to protect the bad guy Democrats. Certainly, some of the partisans want to protect Trump and bad guy Republicans, right? Me, and for people who are real and authentic, we don't care. Who cares about protecting corrupt pedophile Democrats? Like, if you want to do that, there's something a little off with you. If you think that your partisan instincts are more important than protecting young girls, no, that's totally unacceptable. So there is no trap here. The only possibility here is what they've done in every other case. So of course, people should be worried about this, which is Trump goes, yeah, now we released them. But we took out all the things that incriminate Republicans, Trump, and anyone on our side. Oh, look at that. The only list we found is that of Democrats. The problem with that isn't, oh, they're gonna get the Democrats. The problem is, if they do that, they would be purposely protecting Republican predators. And if you're MAGA and you're comfortable with that, again, I think you kind of missed the point.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're gonna see these files sooner or later, whether Trump wants it or not, I would assume in the full form. If there have been redacted bits from Republicans, from the Trump administration, these files, it's on the internet. People have access to them. And from what we've been seeing is people are willing to release them to the public. So I have to believe that even if they have tampered with these files in some way, that it's just inevitable. Like, just you lost. That's
yep.
it.
All right, guys, we got to take a quick break here. When we come back, finally, Bubba. Let's go to our members on TYT.com. Nerd Ferguson says, due to inflation, the segment has to be renamed to Cenk's 3 cents. Not bad, not bad, I like it. Dirge with a dissenting opinion. People like Green are people who drove drunk, caused a horrible crash, then sobered up and are sorry. It's going to take more than apologies before she is considered rehabilitated. Look, I get it, it's a fair point. How authentic is the apology? There are times when PR people write the apology and it's obviously fake, etc. And they do no actions in that regard. But Dirge, to be fair, she's now in a full-blown civil war with Donald Trump. I mean, that's not fake, right? They're at each other's throats. So that's some action, but I hear you, and nothing wrong with the point that you're making. We should make sure that people actually mean it. Art Guy says, hi folks, just stopping by real quick to say that MTG admitting she was wrong as she moves to our position is what we want them all to do. This is what winning the argument looks like. I think that's kind of indisputable. So, filthy Canadian immigrant, already funny, writes in, something that took me a long time to learn in life is that forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for yourself to allow you to move on and not keep carrying grudges and bitterness forward. Let it go and you will be better for it. I forgive MTG. It doesn't mean I have to forget what she has said and done, but I don't need to carry it with me for the rest of time, and I can allow for the possibility that she has grown. That's a beautiful message, brother. I think that's exactly right. Sounds like something we do on Operation Joy. And it's true, guys, when you hate someone or something, you also create a bond, but it's a bond of hatred and it follows you around. So think about that. Apparently you already have, because you made a great point in your case. Sagacious Dragon said, I hope Marjorie Taylor Greene epiphanies set an example for other MAGA/GOP that you could oppose Trump and not only survive, but be rewarded for it. So that's why I think the Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene primaries are super important. So if they lose, it's gonna send a very bad message, right? But if they win, remember they're not against Democrats, that's in the general election. But if they win their primaries, that means you could oppose Trump and you could oppose Israel and live to tell the tale. That would be a very important precedent. Funkin' for Fun says the left, but I want to cancel her so bad, even on the things she agrees with us on. There are folks on the left that say that, but as you're seeing here, guys, a lot of folks on the left who don't say that. Right? And we also have variety in our own ranks, and there's nothing wrong with that as well. I lives in America writes in a couple times, says, is it safe to call Trump maggots fascist now? Look at how they're treating March for having a difference of opinion with Dementia Don. No, brother, I wouldn't go in that direction. So whether it's fair or not is a different question. Whether we should do that is different. So I don't think we should do it, because remember, a lot of those people support Marjorie Taylor Greene. So right? It's no, once we start labeling the voters in a certain way, we're giving the establishment what they want, right? So I say don't do it to the voters, do it to the politicians. Also wrote in, I really like Cenk's post about how we as a country could have used that 30 billion Israel receipt to solve some of our own issues, really eye-opening. Yeah, that was by Brave New Films as usual. Robert Greenwald's an angel. All right. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Yaz with you guys. Real quick, I was responding to one of our viewers and members during the break, and they mentioned this post that I put on X about how what we could have used the $31 billion we gave to Israel in the middle of a genocide for instead, right? I encourage you to check that out, because I attached a video from Brave New Films, and it shows you all the different things we could have spent the $31 billion. It is heartbreaking the lives we could have saved instead of killing all those lives with the 31 billion. All right, yes, what's next?
A bit of a lighter story than that. Let's just roll it.
We're all ignoring the elephant in the room. There's an email that says that Donald Trump blew Bubba. Now, some people think Bubba's Bill Clinton, some people think it's a horse, some people think whatever. Now, I didn't write the email. In fact, when I first saw it online, I didn't even believe it.
Y'all, did Donald Trump blow Bill Clinton? That is the question that has had the internet abuzz after a fascinating email exchange between Jeffrey Epstein and his brother Mark was revealed in the House Oversight Committee's document drop over the weekend. And you're gonna be shocked by Mark Epstein's response to this story, but Cenk, please, what is your 2 cents on this?
Oh boy, I didn't see this one coming. Apparently neither did Trump. Okay. We're gonna talk about the potential veracity of this. And apparently there's at least a question of a Russia connection. But there's always something a little bit more important behind a story like this. So we'll get to that as well.
Okay, so Mark Epstein, he was writing to his brother, Jeffrey Epstein, on March 19th, 2018. And he says, how are you doing? What is your boy Donald up to now? To which Jeffrey responds, all good, Bannon with me, referring to Steve Bannon. Mark writes back to Jeffrey, ask him if Putin has the photos of Trump blowing Bubba. Okay, so Bubba was a nickname used for Bill Clinton. So speculation immediately began that Mark Epstein was claiming that Trump blew Bill Clinton. But now Mark Epstein is saying that the exchange was, it was being misread and that Bubba actually referred to someone else. Here's what he said. He said they were simply part of a humorous private exchange between two brothers and were never meant for public release or to be interpreted as serious remarks. For the avoidance of doubt, the reference to Bubba in this correspondence is not in any way a reference to former President Bill Clinton. Ali Clark, a spokesperson for Mark Epstein, also said that Bubba is a private individual who is not a public figure.
Okay, hold on, yes, I'm gonna jump in.
Yes.
Wait, they're saying he actually did blow a guy. That's amazing.
They didn't say that he didn't blow someone.
Yeah.
It just wasn't Bill Clinton.
First of all,
yes.
There's a million guys with the nickname Bubba. If it was Bill Clinton, I'd fall out of my chair. The most shocking thing that ever happened in American politics, right? So
I mean, it would explain why he was so antagonistic to Hillary during their election.
I never thought about it that way. He's like, oh, Hillary's so bad. Get off my Bill. Get off my Bubba. Okay, so no. Guys, look, fine. It's not, I have no problem believing that it's not Bill Clinton. But holy cow, Jeffrey Epstein's brother is saying, yeah, it wasn't Bill, it was another guy that Donald Trump gave oral sex to. And yes, there's another part of this story I don't understand. Mainstream media loves anything that attacks Donald Trump, is salacious in nature, and they haven't touched this with a 10-foot pole or a couple of inch pole. So what's going on here? How is this not an interesting story? I get that it's salacious, and we'll talk about whether it's relevant in a second, but it's certainly interesting. No one in mainstream media found this interesting, especially because there's a reference to Putin. All this talk of like, hey, did Putin have anything on him? And here's the Epstein boys going, hey, does Putin have that picture on Trump? Wait, does he have a lot of pictures on Trump? Did Epstein give him the pictures from Trump? Oh, that seems super relevant. Yeah, people should be talking about this.
Yeah, so Mark didn't provide any additional context as far as who Bubba actually was. There was a bit of speculation that Ghislaine Maxwell had a horse named Bubba and that maybe that was who Donald Trump blew, but it was very Mark Epstein, as much as you can trust his word on this, he was very clear that it was a someone, not like a horse, right? An individual.
It's not a horse, he didn't.
It's not, I'm gonna say it's not a horse. I will concede that it's not a horse. It would be a lot
Trump's
more fun
a
if it was Bill
germaphobe.
Clinton.
Like, I don't know.
Okay. But like we see now maybe just a glimpse of what was so scary about all of this coming out for Donald Trump. He has made his entire career, both as a public figure and as a politician, on being this strong man who gets all the ladies and spies on teenage girls in dressing rooms and has all of these wives and things like that. But in the midst of all of this, it was really just one of the most bizarre weekends I think we've ever seen as a country, which I understand that is a very big statement to make, but we get this release that Donald Trump has blown someone called Bubba. And also he spent the weekend blasting music from the White House speakers before he fled to Mar-a-Lago. It was so bizarre. I don't know if you saw that one, Cenk, but he was blasting the Phantom of the Opera, like the original Broadway cast recording with Michael Crawford, who he also wanted to honor at the Kennedy Center. So that's a weird thing that Donald Trump and I have in common. We're both big fans of Michael Crawford, but I don't know who else pays attention to him, but he was blasting the Phantom of the Opera and just having a pity party for himself. And then he comes out a day later saying, you know what, just release the files. And then to your other point, it does say something that, in my online sphere, this was all anyone was talking about over the weekend, but it really didn't get a whole lot of coverage on mainstream news. And as much as I rail against social media, I keep it because a lot of times you do get stories that just aren't covered. And even on this show, there's so much that happens that we just don't have time to cover. We have to pick which stories are, the most interesting or the most relevant to, our audience, but there's a lot that gets left out. So it does help to get things from different sources, but this feels like a big deal, this story.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not verified, so that's why they haven't commented on it before, but I feel like it should have been a bigger story.
Yeah, so look, Phantom of the Opera, there's a guy with a mask hiding his real identity. Trump often comes on stage to the song of YMCA. Look, we're pro-LGBTQ. If Trump's in that category, God bless, welcome, no problem at all. But guys, putting aside the fun stuff, do I believe that he did it? I have no idea. How would I know? I don't know. And could they just be joking? They could just be joking. But what's weird is Mark Epstein saying, no, it was a private correspondence, but there really was a dude. Okay, that's okay. Now, the relevant part. Because the rest is fun and we could all make jokes about it, but there is a super relevant part here. people thought, a lot of people think that the whole point of Epstein videotaping everyone and taking pictures of everyone is for blackmail. Well, did they have blackmail on the president of the United States? Who is they? And then they joke around about whether Putin has the blackmail on Donald Trump. And we all know because of drop site news that Epstein was working with a foreign government, was working with the former prime minister of Israel, working with intelligence officers from Israel. So they stayed over at his house dozens of times. And he strategized with them on how to get America to bomb Syria and to bomb Iran. So if they had blackmail of any sort on this president, that would be a massively relevant story. And if you're, in mainstream media, you're like, oh, how dare you not beloved Israel? Okay, maybe it's Russia. You don't mind Russia, right? You talked a lot about that. I mean, it's certainly something to explore to see if there is blackmail or there isn't blackmail. But what's interesting is, yeah, it seems like the day after we found out about Bubba, Trump's like, forget it, just release the files. What difference does it make now? Right? And so you remember the theory that I had, I don't know if you do or yes, but I said, look, a lot of people keep saying, including a lot of the victims, that Trump didn't do anything illegal, right? But yet Trump seems to be scared to death of these files being released. And I had this funny little theory that maybe it's because they have him on tape being naked and he was just embarrassed about that. And that's why he didn't want it released. But Bubba would explain how he might not have done anything illegal, but was desperate to keep the files from getting released because of something else in there that is not illegal, but deeply embarrassing to him. And so I really don't know, guys. There's no way for me to know. But you now know what we know. And I think by far the most relevant part of the story is whether things like that exist on Trump or any other politician, and if anyone is currently using them as blackmail on those politicians.
Yeah, and I know we have to wrap this hour, and I think you guys are actually going to talk about this on the next hour with Jordan. But this does kind of go to your point about how powerful Jeffrey Epstein was while he was alive and how well connected he was to these very, very powerful leaders. He just casually was talking about Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin in these emails with his brother, even as he was joking. And even though it was a joke, we do know that he had very, very strong ties to these people. And now, actually in one of the emails that we saw, he even said, like they're trying to take down Donald Trump, but it's funny because I'm the only one who can take down Donald Trump. And that does seem to allude that he has, actually incriminating or devastating information and evidence against Donald Trump. And he's so powerful that he's doing all of this now as he's deceased.
Yeah, no, you know what, real quick, yes, to that point, Michael Wolff and Epstein have a email conversation right before the 2016 election, and Wolff, who pretends to be a journalist, but in the emails is conspiring with Epstein, again, seeming to want to help a third party, whatever that third party is, having nothing to do with his reporting or anything. But anyway, Michael Wolff then says to what appears to be in the emails his co-conspirator, Jeffrey Epstein, hey, this might be a good time for you to put away Donald Trump if you want to. So Epstein is so powerful, and there's a cabal of people apparently who are secretly deciding who's gonna win, who's gonna lose, which information you're gonna get to see, which information you're gonna not get to see. And whoever Epstein and his handlers were, they decided not to use that information against Trump. And look at that, Trump now totally loyal to one country. But I'm sure it's all a coincidence. Of course, all a coincidence.
Yeah, we'll save the rest of that for the second hour because I know you and Jordan are gonna touch on that a little bit more.
Yep, indeed. All right, a lot more on this story when we return. Thank you, Yes.
Damn it, they failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong, because you should be angry. Young Turks.
It was genuine. He was mad.
Cenk Uygur, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
Cenk the Turk Uygur.
kind of TV station is this? The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It was right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power. We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world. We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
Television, we're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
And Phil and host beat CNN and Headline News combined. At some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a tall glass of shut up juice.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him.
He says to me, "You won't believe the meeting that I just had."
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
And they want him off the air.
Cenk took an incredible risk.
We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I should be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it.
Magic. It's showtime. And say 45 minutes. I'm hosting today. Now I know what you're thinking, JR, your face is already perfect, but you know what? I still need to apply some makeup. I went through this process, right? A few years ago. When I realized that I was gonna have to wear makeup on the show. I had to go through like finding out what my undertones were. You guys know what those are? I got my MAC Cosmetics. It says SPF 15 foundation, broad spectrum. But apparently what I have is red undertones, and I think pores are not supposed to be seen. I need all these things to be confirmed for me. These sponge things don't work for me. You gotta use your hands. This idea. That's how the magic really happens. So we're gonna go through a tutorial how to make the magic happen from beautiful to beautifuler. Let's go. I've already been moisturized. That's the first thing. But moisturization already happened. We go raw. All hands. Pick up. Couple streaks. This is the guy way of putting on makeup. We got dots. There's some shiny points that generally happen. First of all, here we go. You dust here. I'm putting way too much, but you dust. Oh, get the excess off. You don't want chunky powder. There's like a T-zone, I think, right? Mine is a double T-zone. Because I went middle and another cross. Make sure your nose isn't all shiny. People get on you for it. You know, say, that's not a good point you made on there, JR. Your nose is shiny. You guys are picky like that sometimes. I think that's about it, fellas and ladies. See you guys next time. Bitsies.
I love cows.
Well, hello.
That's kind of nasty.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk Uygur, Jordan Uhl with you guys. Jordan's also the host of the Surges podcast. All right, Jordan, what's next?
We recently learned that Jeffrey Epstein had such close ties to Democratic delegate Stacey Plaskett. He texted her advice on how to conduct a congressional hearing while she was in the hearing. Cenk, we've got more, but what are your 2 cents here?
We've now learned through a lot of different reporting, including Dropsite News' reporting, that Jeffrey Epstein was actually one of the most powerful men on earth. It was not a small little operation he was running. He was connected all the way up to Vladimir Putin. And in this story, you're going to see him texting with a Democratic congresswoman in the middle of a hearing, and then her, like a puppet, saying the exact question Epstein wanted asked. It is amazing. Go ahead, Joe.
Now, Plaskett has been a member of Congress since 2015. She is a delegate for the U.S. Virgin Islands, meaning that she doesn't get a vote. But regardless, she was able to participate in congressional hearings. Here is footage of a hearing from 2019 in which Michael Cohen was being questioned about his relationship with Donald Trump. Watch how Plaskett texts Epstein during the meeting.
Attorney-client privilege, yes, I will turn it over.
You, as my friend Mr. Meadows pointed out, misled this committee even today in a written submission that contradicted your testimony. You have suggested you are going to review that. Did you review? Are you going to review it in our next break to correct the record, yes or no?
Yes.
Question, you helped out the president's campaign or were involved in the campaign as a representative, as a spokesman, even in your words today. It was your idea for the campaign dating back to 2011. Is that accurate, yes or no?
Yes.
Mr. Weisenberg and other individuals, Ms. Rona. Who are those individuals? Are they with the Trump organization?
They
and
are.
Are there other people that we should be meeting with?
Her office is directly next to his, and she's involved in a lot.
As for why Epstein was connected to Plaskett, all you have to do is follow the money. Epstein had donated generously to Democratic politicians from the U.S. Virgin Islands for years. In exchange, he got $300 million in tax incentives and was able to fly girls to his islands without customs batting an eye. Epstein owned 2 islands in the Virgin Islands, Great St. James and Little St. James. There are around 50 islands total in the Virgin Islands. Now, Epstein donated to Plaskett specifically in 2014, 2016, and 2018. Epstein also encouraged his associates to send Plaskett donations. And in 2018, he agreed to donate $30,000 to the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee at Plaskett's request. For what it's worth, the DCCC did not accept Plaskett or Epstein's donation. Now, here's a statement provided by Plaskett's office addressing her messages with Epstein. During the hearing, Congresswoman Plaskett received texts from staff, constituents, and the public at large offering advice, support, and in some cases, partisan vitriol, including from Epstein. As a former prosecutor, she welcomes information that helps her get at the truth and took on the GOP that was trying to bury the truth. The Congresswoman has previously made clear her long record combating sexual assault and human trafficking, her disgust over Epstein's deviant behavior, and her support for his victims. But Plaskett isn't the only powerful Democrat with connections to Epstein. Last week, we covered Epstein's close ties with former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers. You can check out that video on our YouTube channel. On Friday, the American Prospect reported that Summers is playing a major role in crafting what's being referred to as Project 2029. That's a policy playbook from the Center for American Progress, or CAP. The project describes CAP as the highest profile think tank on the center left. Like its conservative counterpart, Project 2025, Project 2029 is allegedly being designed as a list of policy priorities should Democrats win the presidency in 2029. Summers is a, quote, distinguished senior fellow, CAP. Summers had taken a leadership role in advising the project's economic policy arm, 2 of the Prospect's sources said. They also said that Summers was the final sign-off on a CAP housing policy paper set to be released next week. In response to the Prospect's reporting, CAP not only denied that Summers was the last sign-off on the paper, but also denied the existence of Project 2029 entirely. But this is bigger than just CAP. Summers is associated with a huge list of corporations and think tanks, including, but not limited to, Harvard University as a professor, OpenAI as a board member, Bloomberg as a columnist, the New York Times as an opinion writer, and the Yale Budget Lab as an advisory board member. Now, Cenk, to bring it back to the start, what do you make of Epstein texting this delegate Plaskett during the hearing?
Yeah, so this is why I hate partisan crap. Who cares if he's doing it with a Democrat or Republican? So I'm on the left, I'm a Democrat, but what the hell was that? That was crazy. So he's apparently got these Congress people on speed dial, and he's watching. I read the whole story, of course, and he's watching the entire hearings, and he's texting people different directions. Did anybody know that Epstein was running our government? I mean, that was amazing. Did you see? She doesn't know who Rona is, so she misspells it in the text. She thinks it might be an acronym for something, and then she says, Ms. Rona. Rona's her first name. It's Rona Graff, the assistant for Trump. She literally has no idea what she's asking. She's only asking that question because Epstein directed her to ask that question. And interesting that Epstein at that point is directing people on how to damage Trump. So that doesn't serve any of my interest for me to tell you that, but that's what's happening in that hearing, right? You gotta be fair and you gotta call out what's actually happening. But what's interesting in all the emails is Epstein goes back and forth, back and forth. Should we hurt Trump or should we help Trump? Should we hurt or help? And depending on what Trump is saying. And he categorizes Trump as dangerous. My guess as to why he thinks Trump is dangerous is because usually when someone is bought or blackmailed, they stay bought or blackmailed, right? Whereas Trump is so volatile, they're not sure how to handle him, right? Should we hurt him or should we use him as an asset? I'm saying it openly, guys. They're all over Ehud Barak's emails from Job Site News is how Epstein is conspiring with Ehud Barak, former prime minister of Israel, with literal Israeli spies. He's getting, and by the way, there's Democrats all over the emails. There's Dana Bash's ex-husband, Jeremy Bash, who works in the Democratic administration. He's organizing tours for the former prime minister of Israel, but only because Epstein asked him to. What? Why is Epstein being feted by both the very top of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party? So now to Larry Summers. Look, guys, there's two giant problems with Larry Summers here. Number one, the emails are devastating. He's asking Epstein for how he can quote unquote get horizontal with a woman that he's mentoring at work. Jesus Christ, man. And then he talks about using his position of power and privilege. It's like out of a Me Too manual, right? And he's like, but she can't get that access to that stuff that I have and the things that she needs for her professional career unless she gives me the sex. Like, oh my God, right? And he's talking to Epstein about this, and Epstein's like, "Atta boy, I don't let her get away with anything without giving you sex." And both for Plaskett and for Larry Summers. Larry Summers was a Treasury Secretary under under Bill Clinton, and then he was the top economic advisor to Obama. And they're both talking about how to conspire to make sure that they use sex for their own advantage and et cetera. Okay, but then the second problem for Larry Summers being at Center for American Progress is Larry Summers is the most neoliberal, pro-corporate guy in the entire Democratic Party. Part of the reason he didn't become Treasury Secretary on top for Obama is because progressives were like, no, Timothy Geithner was bad enough. And we already had Summers destroy our economy by doing all of these disgustingly pro-corporate positions. So he's writing up Project 2029? No, thank you. Then I don't want to back anyone backed by Center for American Progress, because that means that they're already working on how to ruin the Democratic Party by making it a neoliberal dumpster for whichever corporations are funding them. I think that's actually even more offensive. No to Larry Summers under any and all circumstances, especially this one.
Yeah, of course, it's ludicrous that while a delegate, still a member of Congress, is texting with Epstein in 2019, like way after everybody knew who he was. I mean, even at that point, Trump didn't even want to associate with him. And you're texting him during the hearing. This idea that she just gets messages from the general public and it just happens to be him. Give me a break. Like it's just, you're turning a blind eye to it. That's a non-starter of a statement from her office. And then I'm with you, Cenk, on the Larry Summers stuff. Like, yes, of course, we know his involvement with Epstein is bad. And then there's a separate and of lesser significance here, issue with his involvement in shaping housing policy. Are you kidding me? Larry Summers has fought, even as a liberal, has fought for financial deregulation for decades. And we saw where that got us in 2008 and 2009 when the housing market collapsed. And to be specific, even when he was in the government, even when he was within the Clinton administration during a liberal government, Brooksley Born, who ran the Commodities Future Trading Commission back then, was trying to regulate derivatives. Now, these are risky financial instruments. And Larry Summers brought the banks, the heads of the banks, into a room and called her on speakerphone, said, I'm with all the CEOs of the banks. We don't want you to regulate these derivatives. And they really pressured her and talked her out of it. And that was just one of a handful of things that he did, using his influence in the government and these different administrations to give handout after handout after handout to Wall Street and enable their greed, which led to a massive crash and recession in 2008 and 2009 that we are still feeling the ripple effects from. The inequality in this country widened then, and it continues to get worse to this day. That you would even entertain the thought of having Larry Summers shape policy for a potential Democratic administration only discourages people from participating and ultimately reinforces this idea that both sides are bad on this issue, of the issue of inequality and corporate control of our government. And just, again, it discourages people from feeling enthusiastic. It only reinforces the idea that they're in it for the status quo, that any Democratic nominee is just going to protect the status quo and won't look out for us. So how could I get excited by this prospect?
Yeah, it's a disaster. Two quick things on the dates. Remember what Jordan's explaining. So this happened in 2019. Not only was Epstein arrested in 2008 already, but in 2018, Miami Herald broke a series of stories that made it absolutely indisputable that Epstein was a prolific pedophile. And both Plaskett and Summers past 2018, in the year 2019, are like, hey, Epstein, how you doing? Let me get some advice. Okay, so apparently they didn't mind at all. As long as the money keeps coming in, and apparently the sex advice keeps coming in, and whatever other projects they're working on together keep continuing, they didn't care at all. Now, to the point that Jordan's making, so not only does Larry Summers help destroy the housing market in the first place by deregulating the banks, the deregulating derivatives was the #1 cause of the crash. Number 2 wasn't even close. That was the principal reason. And Larry Summers did that. Then the corrupt Democrats bring Larry Summers back in the Obama administration, and what does he do? He lets all the bankers go. He says, oh yeah, the bankers, it's not their fault. He gives them a bailout and pays their bonuses. Pays their bonuses for destroying our economy and costing us 12 million jobs. Now the Democrats want to bring him back as the architect of the next Democratic administration? Oh, hell to the no. No way. So what that shows you is the Democratic establishment hasn't learned a single thing. They're just as corrupt and dirty as they have ever been. So do not trust anyone in the Democratic establishment. They do not have your best interests in mind. The minute they get elected, they're gonna do a switcheroo, and they're gonna bring Larry Summers and all the neoliberals that have destroyed our economy and helped corporations ravage our government. They're gonna bring them right back because they're paid by those guys. No way. Democratic primaries in 2028 is the most important election you will ever have in your lifetime. It's not even close. They cried wolf about all the other elections. In 2028, you're either gonna get an establishment type that's gonna have Larry Summers as his top economic advisor, or you're gonna pick a populist for the first time, someone like Bernie Sanders, and you're actually gonna do Democratic policies. That's gonna be the choice, and it'll determine which direction this entire country goes. Okay, we gotta take a break here, and when we come back, a lot more to get to. Laura Loomer versus Marjorie Taylor Greene. The MAGA Civil War doesn't seem to have an ending, and I'm here for it. Come back with popcorn. on TYT. Let's go to our members on TYT.com. Don Dada Dragon says, Project 2029 sounds more dangerous than 2025. 2025 is openly corrupt. 2029 is full of pressure releases and other tricks meant to erode real hope in democracy. Yeah, no interest at all. Look, all these think tanks in Washington, they're the most toxic things on earth. They're all pro-corporate things that are where Lewis Powell wrote in his memo. We're going to talk to David Sirota about this in about half an hour. How they should create think tanks to do the thinking for Washington, but that they should actually be secret groups to help the Chamber of Commerce turn the country more corporate. That's exactly what they've done on the Republican side and the Democratic side. Okay, so gee, I wonder where they get their funding. Okay, Dragon with the Girl Tattoo says, did Epstein have dirt on everyone in government? Well, either dirt or he paid them, or he was allies with people who paid 90% of Congress. It's not a question that Epstein was allies with Israel's government. Not a question. That's a stone cold fact. Israel's lobby does control 90% of Congress. We just keep ignoring it because, it's uncomfortable and mainstream media hasn't given us permission. It's already proven. Epstein worked with Israel. I don't know that he worked for Israel, but he certainly worked with Israel. There's no question about that. And no one's even, nobody even challenges that fact. They're just like, oh, are you allowed to say that? I just said it. It's proven. You read the Drop Site News 4-part explanation. There's no question about it. Gee, I wonder who was Epstein working for? It's such a mystery. Was he alone? It's not a mystery. We already solved it. Okay, Jenks Left Tricep Fear says the only one that is talking to Trump in the media, taking it to Trump in the media is Newsom. I'm not a fan, but that is a correct strategy. You need to go right at that bitch and humiliate him. I think you need to do both, and I think Gavin actually is doing both. So whether you like him or not, I think his strategy is pretty good. Challenge Donald Trump, but be a little bit more open to voters from the other camp. That's a smart strategy. I'm just calling it like I see it. Dirge says, calling women low IQ, how on brand for Trump? Yeah, that was earlier in the show, and he did do that, and it is on brand. Michael Napin says, so time for MTG to sign the populist plank? Maybe. We could ask her. I Lives in America says, I think blowing Bubba's hyperbole for Trump is up to guys' butt, which is also hyperbole. And look, guys, I think that Bubba might have been a misspelling for Bibi. So that makes a lot of sense. Back on TYT, Cenk and Jordan with you guys, and also Mr. Anderson, because they just joined. So apparently our victory is inevitable. Thank you for joining, brother. Appreciate it. Everybody, tyt.com/join. That's how you can get all of our content anytime you want and help the show tremendously. We definitely appreciate it and we need it. All right, speaking of things you need, Noble Mobile's our new partner and sponsor. We love these guys. They're carrier just like Verizon and AT&T, but they're just infinitely better. We're gonna change that graphic up for you because, there it is, it did change. That's much better. tyt.com/switch is how you do it. So it takes about 5 minutes. You don't have to change your phone number. You don't have to change anything. You're super easy. I have perfect service. I already did it. And it's $50 a month. So already that's a huge win for most of you. If you're paying less than $50 to Verizon or AT&T, God bless, that's amazing. Then okay, I get it. But anybody paying more, which is almost all of you, if you switch, it costs you nothing other than 5 minutes. And plus on top of that, if you don't use some of your data, they give you cash back on top. So it's a giant win-win. It saves people around $500 to $1,000 a year. So tyt.com/switch, tyt.com/switch. All right, Jordan, what's next?
Take a look at this.
This is clearly an intelligence agency, and at this point, pretty much proven that it's Mossad. Drop Site News has Ehud Barak's emails where they are conspiring. Epstein and the former prime minister of Israel are conspiring to get America to bomb Syria and to get America to bomb Iran.
And for someone to think that it's got to be about Israel, then you have to say that both sides are covering for Israel. And I don't think so. I don't think that the Democrats were as in love with Israel
definitely.
as
This morning, Cenk explained Jeffrey Epstein's ties to the Israeli government live on Piers Morgan Uncensored. And we've got more on this developing story. But Cenk, on that conversation specifically, what's your 2 cents here?
I love how he thought it was going to be a gotcha, like, oh, then both sides would have to be working with Israel. Duh. Of course, 90% of Congress gets donations from the Israeli lobby. They happen to coincidentally vote with Israel 100% of the time, but apparently that's news to Officer Tatum. Okay, apparently he wasn't a detective. Okay, so we're gonna show you how Dana Bash is slightly outraged by this, but internally she seemed to be very outraged by the mere suggestion. So let's have that conversation.
Yeah, for one, I'm shocked that there's gambling going on in this establishment, Cenk. But Cenk isn't the only one debating Epstein's ties to Israel. We're about to show you an exchange that Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene had over the weekend with Dana Bash. But keep in mind that Bash's ex-husband, Jeremy Bash, was connected to an Israeli spy who stayed at Epstein's apartment for 3 extended periods of time. More on that later. For now, let's watch Greene and Bash. Take a look.
I do want to ask you about something you posted just yesterday on X. You questioned who and what country is putting so much pressure on Trump to keep the Epstein files hidden. And you included a picture about donations from pro-Israel lobbying group AIPAC. What are you trying to say there?
Well, I think it's the question that many Americans are asking, especially when we saw information recently come out in these emails that the Oversight Committee that I serve on has released. And we saw Jeffrey Epstein with ties to Ehud Barak. We saw him making business deals with them, also business deals that involved the Israeli government, and seems to have led into their intel agencies. And I think the right question is to ask is, was Jeffrey Epstein working for Israel? And I'm proud to say I don't take money from AIPAC. I don't take money from any special group of people. I'm just representing my district and the American people. And so that's what I was referring to.
No, that wasn't all. Here is more of their exchange. Take a look.
I just want to be clear. Are you saying Israel is pushing the president of the United States to cover up the Epstein files? And what evidence do you have that that is the case?
I simply just asked out loud, is there a foreign government? And it could be any foreign government, but is a foreign government pushing to keep this covered up? Because people just don't understand the big fight against.
Well, you had AIPAC up there. It was pretty clear which government you were talking about.
That I'm questioning that government in particular and questioning any other foreign government.
Now we're going to get in a second to Dana Bash's ex-husband, Jeremy Bash. But to be clear, on Dana Bash specifically, she has spent the last 3 years now, or 2 years, demonizing Palestinians, presenting false equivalencies, trying to deflect from what Israel has been doing in Gaza. As a host on CNN, she has repeatedly interjected on behalf of Israeli interests on her own, not saying she's doing it on behalf of them, but you must consider her perspective when she talks about topics like this. Now let's talk about Jeremy Bash. According to Drop Site News, between the years of 2013 and 2016, an Israeli intelligence officer named Yoni Koren lived at Epstein's apartment 3 separate times. He worked directly with Mossad during his career. In the 90s, Coren coordinated with US officials such as Colin Powell. In 2015, Coren helped arrange a meeting between former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak and former CIA Director and Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta. That meeting was arranged with the help of Jeremy Bash. By then, Bash had already finished his terms as chief of staff for the CIA from 2009 to 2011, and the Department of Defense from 2011 to 2013. He and Dana Bash separated in 2007 after about 10 years of marriage. Bash took care of the arrangements for Barak and his family to get access to secure facilities in the White House and the Pentagon. Bash was by then a private citizen, and he had started his own consulting company, Beacon Global Strategies. But he still enjoyed high-level access to the White House and US defense establishment. That's strange, Cenk. Why is someone who has a consulting company allowed to just freely roam the White House?
Yeah, it's awfully strange. There's a lot of strange activities when it comes to Epstein. Texting Democratic Congress people in the middle of hearings, telling them what to ask. Being buddy with the former top economic advisor to Obama and Clinton, Larry Summers. Now with this Jeremy Bash guy, he says, oh yeah, do the former Prime Minister of Israel a favor for me. And Jeremy Bash is like, right away, Mr. Epstein, certainly Mr. Epstein. And he arranges a tour. What is going on here? So like Dana Bash pretends to be outraged there, and I'm sure that she is actually outraged because she thinks it's unthinkable. But then Dana, you tell us, why are all these people in both the Democratic Party and the Republican Party doing massive favors for Jeffrey Epstein? Is it blackmail? Is it just normal campaign contributions? Is it that he's working with a foreign government? I mean, you tell us. The circumstantial evidence is overwhelming, so I'll give that case in a second, okay? But they notice that people like Bash never give an alternate explanation. They're just always huffing and puffing about like, you can't say it's Israel. Like that conversation she had with Marjorie Taylor Greene, I feel like she thought, oh, beautiful, I got her to say it, that's it, her career is over. She said that it might be Israel that's directing an American president. That's it, cancel her, everybody, we're done with her. No, you're not getting it, Dana. Nobody's canceling her. No one cares anymore, okay? You're only canceling people in your own head. It's not working at all anymore. Now, look, we're a fair show. I don't think what Jeremy Bash did should be on Dana Bash. They're two different people. Even if they were still married, it's not on her. And they've been divorced and they're divorced for a while. I don't care about their personal lives. So Jeremy Bash is doing something wrong with Epstein is a different story. Dana Bash supporting Israel 2,000 times over on air and being outraged at the suggestion that Epstein and Israel might be connected is a different story. Okay, so now on that one, she's like, what evidence might you have? Okay, first of all, we have all the evidence from Dropsite News that shows, yes, Israeli spies lived with Jeffrey Epstein for different stretches at a time, for long stretches at a time. Ehud Barak came over 30 times. Ehud Barak couldn't get meetings with Vladimir Putin. He asked Epstein to do it. This is a former Prime Minister of Israel. Epstein goes, oh, don't worry, I'll look into it with my sources. And voila, he gets a meeting with Ehud Barak and Putin. He's what literally, you know who can do that? I don't know, is there 5 people, 10 people, 20 people in the world that have that kind of power? That means he's one of the most powerful men on earth. So the idea that he might be connected with a government is absurd. The idea that he is not connected with a government is absurd. And he's in the emails, Ehud Barak's emails, talking about, oh, let's try to get America to bomb Syria. Let's try to get America to bomb Iran. But I'm sure Dana Bash is gonna do a segment on that, right? I'm sure CNN is all over the airwaves talking about that, right? Is the reporting true or false? You know the reporting is true, that's why you're not doing a segment on it. Isn't it weird that they're purposely covering up a massive, fascinating story that solves the mystery of why Epstein was so powerful? And Dana, you can go and call it a trope and do whatever you want. And again, no one cares anymore, right? Oh, we canceled you already, we called it a trope, okay? I don't care what you called it. The Israeli lobby donates to 90% of Congress. Those folks vote with Israel 100% of the time. Prove me wrong. And so if that's true, which it is true, then does that entity, no matter what it is, by the way, there's several different entities that fit that bill. Big pharma, big oil, defense contractors, but yes, the Israeli lobby is one of them. And does the Israeli lobby totally control 90% of Congress? Obviously. No, how dare you say that? Well, completely true. You have been canceled in my mind because I find it to be a trope. Is there a trope about big pharma? Am I not allowed to say that? Am I being anti-pharmacist? I don't care what you think. I care about journalism. And it's obvious that Bash is not doing that. But to be fair, here she gave Marjorie Taylor Greene a forum. Marjorie Taylor Greene made her points, and she appears to be completely correct. And Bash, as usual with her skepticism and huffing and puffing, is not correct. And so, by the way, if I'm misrepresenting her, and I've read too much into her past context in this particular clip, I'm very happy to have a civilized conversation with Dana Bash. My guess is she's not happy to have that conversation, because if you have a conversation about Israel, you can't, because everyone in the conversation has already been canceled if they criticize Israel. And I'm sure that she'll be outraged by facts and journalism. Okay, well then you shouldn't call yourself a journalist.
Yeah, so for me, I think this is a risk here when you have, or not being a risk, but just a possibility and a scenario that activists, organizers need to consider when somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene, with a history of anti-Semitic comments, does make a pivot and changes her tune on something like this, right? Anything that involves Israel. It's an easy layup for somebody like Dana Bash or a Jake Tapper, whomever, to just, well, what do you mean by that? Insinuating, oh, you're only doing this because you're anti-Semitic. And now we can talk about this topic and say, yeah, no, it's clear there's a link here. But for her, it's an easy target and a distraction. I mean, this is a host who has allowed people to come on her show for years to insinuate that pro-Palestinian protests were anti-Semitic inherently, that the phrase "Free Palestine" is a call for violence against Jews. I mean, the list goes on, and we rolled our eyes, we pulled out our hair for years. But in a situation like this, it's not so much that the message is wrong. She's just not the right messenger for it. But they don't really care about that. If in fact, they would rather have somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene on there so they can just quickly shut it down, insinuate she's only doing it because she's anti-Semitic, and then move on. If they really cared about getting to the core issue here, really drill down into the story, they would invite Ryan Grimm, or they would invite anyone else from Drop Site to come on and talk about it. But they won't do that. They don't really care. If anything, they want to deflect from it. So you can see the bias in how they select guests, topics, and framing. This is a massive story that every major outlet should be chasing down. But because it involves the Israeli government, they're like, no, we're good. We'll have Marjorie Taylor Greene on to look like a lunatic. That's it.
Yeah, except she doesn't. She looks perfectly reasonable in that case. So sad day for them. Look, guys, I mean, I said I'd be happy to discuss it with Dana Bash, and she could shred me and have all of her evidence that it's obviously not Israel. They're never gonna have that conversation. But forget that, Jordan's right. Just have Ryan Grimm on. He's a reporter, he broke the story. And by the way, if the story is wrong, then grill Ryan and show that he's a terrible anti-Semite and those are not real facts. But they're never gonna have that conversation because that conversation shows indisputably it was Israel. And the very, very last thing that CNN wants you to find out is that it's Israel. Partly because all their stories, we've talked about this before, any story related to Israel for CNN has to run through their bureau in Israel. Why? What an insane thing. Imagine if they're like, okay, we're gonna report on Russia and what they're doing in Ukraine, but we can't report anything unless the Russians approve it. So we're sending it to our bureau in Moscow and have them approve it before we report it. But for Israel, they don't think that's weird. They think that's normal. No, it's not normal, it's super weird. And yes, they have enormous power in this country. And if you're saying otherwise, you're doing the opposite of journalism. You're trying to cover up facts because you're biased in favor of one particular country. Super obvious. Okay, we got to take a break. We'll be right back. Okay, let's go. Let's go to Twitch. Amy Goodman's peace sign, I like that handle, says Newsom is still being a corporate shill and AIPAC-loving centrist, even if he pushes back on Trump. Well, two things can be true at the same time. I could tell him he's doing a good job on pushing back on Trump, and I can criticize when he goes, AIPAC, interesting, very interesting. It's interesting. Okay, by the way, if you don't know why he was doing that, I wasn't on the show that day. He's saying it so he has plausible deniability to both sides. So he could tell his voters, I thought it was interesting that they were asking that. And he could tell his donors, isn't it interesting that they were asking only about Israel, right? So that's why he did it, but he overdid it. We're such a fair show. I keep telling you the good things he's doing and the bad things he's doing, but wait, whose side are you on? The side of news and facts. Okay, Meowsers clause to establish Meownt. By the way, my daughter, I told her about your handle. She tried to look it up online because she wanted to find out your comments. Anyway, MTG being the first to drop the Epstein-Israel connection on live TV is the anti-establishment moon landing. One giant step for mankind. I hear you, I hear you. That's why I've been encouraging it, because that's what you need. You need an alliance, you need people. And look, other than Ro Khanna, has there been anyone brave enough on the Democratic side to say that? And I don't get it, I really don't get it. I don't know why Rashida Tlaib doesn't do it, I'll say it. I don't know why Ilhan Omar doesn't do it. I don't get it. Why is AOC not doing it? I don't get it. I don't get it. So there's just one guy, Ro Khanna. What? I mean, I can list a bunch of, there's tons of progressives that I think are good progressives, but they're all scared to death of this. You got to give Ro 1,000,000,000% credit here. I mean, it takes a lot of courage. The minute he did it, he was a legitimate player, and he's still a legitimate player in Democratic circles, and he took a risk by taking on AIPAC. And of course, immediately they're like, anti-Semite, cancel him, right? And of course, as usual these days, it only made him stronger. But so we got 3 people in Congress out of 535. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Tom Massey, and Ro Khanna, who are willing to call out Israel's influence. That proves itself. You see what I'm saying? If you said, okay, can we find 3 brave members of Congress to call out Syria? You could 535 of them, right? So it's crazy. Kaylee asks, is there anyone reputable on CNN? Well, these days we like Abby Phillip, okay? Hard Guy says, Dana Bash is wearing her, but how are you gonna pay for that face? That's hilarious, Hard Guy, nice job. All right, we'll be right back, guys. All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Jordan with you guys. Jordan, what's next?
Take a look at this.
Mr. President, Tucker Carlson recently had a friendly interview with anti-Semite Nick Fuentes. Tucker Carlson. What role do you think Tucker Carlson should play in the Republican Party and the conservative movement going forward?
Well, I found him to be good. I mean, he said good things about me over the years. I think he's good. We've had some good interviews. I did an interview with him where we had 300 million hits. You know that.
President Donald Trump was asked about Tucker Carlson's interview with racist and anti-Semitic podcaster Nick Fuentes, and Trump didn't exactly answer the question. And we have more of what he told reporters, but first, Cenk, were you satisfied with Trump's answer there?
No, he's gonna fight with Tucker later, but we'll tell you why he's defending Tucker now and why I think he's gonna fight later.
Okay. Well, Tucker Carlson has been at the center of the right-wing civil war the past few weeks after he hosted Fuentes on his show. The pro-Israel wing, namely Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin, have been on the attack, and they've been going after Tucker hard. And some initial defenses of Carlson were eventually walked back. Heritage President Kevin Roberts initially voiced support for Carlson regarding the interview, but he faced an onslaught of criticism and eventually apologized and said the organization does not condone Fuentes or his views. Until now, Trump has largely stayed out of it. So let's see what else he had to say when he was talking to these reporters. Take a look.
We've had some great interviews with Tucker Carlson, but you can't tell him who to interview. I mean, if he wants to interview Nick Fuentes, I don't know much about him, but if he wants to do it, get the word out. Let him, people have to decide. Ultimately, people have to decide.
Then a reporter asked Trump about Fuentes specifically. Here's what he had to say. Take a look.
You yourself had dinner with Nick Fuentes at Mar-a-Lago a few years ago. What role should he play in the conservative movement?
Well, I didn't know he was coming, and he was with, as you know, somebody, Kanye. And Kanye asked if he could have dinner, and he brought Nick. I didn't know Nick at the time. And he did. He came, and along with a few other people. He brought a few people with him. Meeting people, talking to people, like for somebody like Tucker, that's what they do. People are controversial. Some are, some aren't. I'm not controversial, so I like it that way.
They're calling him the most uncontroversial president of all time, Cenk. What do you think?
He couldn't believe that Kanye brought an anti-Semite to dinner. Couldn't see that coming. Okay, anyways, so I do agree with him. Yeah, Tucker's allowed to talk to whoever he likes to talk to. This whole canceling people is absurd, right? So do I like that Joe Rogan talks to Alex Jones or anybody talks to Alex Jones? Not really, right? I think Alex is a little crazy. Am I gonna regulate it? No, let him talk to whoever the hell he wants. So, okay, so I would have been tougher on Fuentes, but Tucker said a million times now that he does not believe and he thinks that it is unchristian to judge people based on their race or religion, and that especially includes anti-Semitism, and it's outrageous and it's unacceptable, etc. But no, it's never good enough. It's never good enough. No, so look, the reason I think that Trump is okay with it now is because he talked to Fuentes, so he figured it out. Okay, if I say that it's bad to talk to Fuentes, it's going to come back on me, and you don't want anything to come back on Trump. But do I really think that Trump is defending Tucker and going to go to the mat for him? Well, they haven't really gotten into it yet with as Marjorie Taylor Greene and Trump have, right? But I think that freight train is inevitable, and because Tucker Carlson is defending the original MAGA positions, and Donald Trump holds almost none of the original MAGA positions. So when that clash happens, then he won't defend Tucker anymore, because then it'll hurt his feelings. And for Donald Trump, it's never about policy or principles, it's always about his feelings.
I mean, I think Trump knows it's an unpopular question to answer. Honestly, it's an unpopular or a risky situation for him to wade into. But I did find funny what I did find funny was how his initial response was to talk about when he went on that show and claimed he got 300 million hits, which, Cenk, for a single interview is incredible, but it's also not true to my knowledge. But that's what he tried to deflect with. And I think that's all he really cares about. Look, these people are bad. Some people like them, some people don't like them. I want everybody to like me. So it was just kind of more of the same while kind of answering the question, but just mostly just dodging. He knows it's risky. He knows he needs the pro-Israel to an extent. He needs that wing's support, but he also needs this growing right-wing part of the base that doesn't support Israel, that doesn't like that government and wants them out of our politics. So it's kind of a sloppy answer for him, but it was more of the same.
People are always guessing as to what's in Donald Trump's mind. Here, I'll decipher it for you. There's a treadmill with one word on it, Trump. So it just goes Trump, 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 Trump. There, I solved it. Okay, we're out of time. When we come back, though, Jordan, you're awesome. Let's note that for the record. Okay, when we come back, David Sirota is going to join us, one of the best progressives in the country. And he has a story of how Donald Trump is supporting a Democratic councilman in Cincinnati. Why? That is super interesting. Wait till you solve that. We solve that mystery for you. We'll do that when we return. All right, back on The Revolution. This is the show where we try to bring the left and right together to revolt against the establishment because they bathe in corruption, and we can't stand it anymore. And we're going to get rid of all the corporate Democrats and Republicans. So now we're bringing on guests. Some are saying, yeah, no matter where we are in the political spectrum, we're in favor of this revolution. Peaceful, nonviolent, obviously a political one. And they're saying why they care. Now, we're also bringing on other guests like the one I have on today, David Sirota. So David was a speechwriter for Bernie Sanders during his presidential campaigns, and he now runs The Lever. He's written in The Guardian, Rolling Stone, etc. And we want to talk to him about why we need that revolution, okay? Now, he's gonna lay out evidence for what's wrong with government, right? And so that's exactly what we're looking for here, and also what's wrong with media. So, David, you've written so many stories showing government corruption that it's hard to keep up. So I'm gonna try to focus on at least 2 of them here, but we'll keep bringing you guys back. We had a great reporter that did a wonderful story for The Lever last week as well about Big Pharma's power in taking over government and affecting it. But I want to get to how they affect the media and how Barry Weiss directing CBS is not a new thing, right? It's part of a corporate scheme that you wrote about that's been around for decades. But first, I want to start with a different story you wrote about how J.D. Vance and others in the Trump administration are trying to aid and abet basically hypercharging Citizens United, putting it on steroids, and just instead of draining the swamp, making the entire government the swamp. So tell us what that case is.
Sure. So J.D. Vance has been spearheading a case that's gotten very little attention, which is designed to expand upon, or at least give the Supreme Court a chance to expand upon the old Citizens United ruling. The case is about, it's sort of a technical issue about limits on the amount of money that political parties can spend in coordination with political candidates, which sounds really technical. But what it's really about is eliminating, or at least limiting, the campaign donation limits that huge donors still face when it comes to direct donations to candidates. It's important to understand that the Citizens United ruling said that donations to, essentially, Citizens United in another case said donations to super PACs could not be limited because super PACs allegedly operate independently of candidates. Now that's an obvious legal fiction. The idea that a super PAC made up of a senator's former staffers spending millions and millions of dollars in support of that senator, the idea that that super PAC is independent of that senator is ridiculous. It should be ridiculous to everybody, but that's the legal fiction the Supreme Court created. But it still maintained the idea that direct donations to candidates can be limited because direct donations can be inherently corrupting. So what the J.D. Vance case is about is trying to eliminate some of those limits so that party committees can essentially become pass-through shell entities for big donors to funnel even more money directly to candidates. So we are living in an era in which corruption is becoming so normalized that they're now targeting the last remaining remnants of campaign finance law, even after Citizens United effectively did away with most of that campaign finance law. That's how intense the effort to legalize and normalize corruption really is right now.
Okay, so I want to ask you about a Democratic councilman in Cincinnati that Donald Trump is helping, that looks like for no apparent reason. I mean, it's just crazy that Donald Trump cares about this tiny little case in Cincinnati, but how it connects to all this. But I'm gonna ask you that in a minute. So first, look, there's so many of these cases, but recently we found out through leaked emails that Larry Ellison was talking to an Israeli ambassador and told him, oh, I talked to Marco Rubio and I approved of him and he says he's going to support Israel. So I sent $5 million to his super PAC. I mean, that's not the corruption of appearance.
That's a reminder that super PACs are not really independent of the politicians that they purport to be independent of. And I think that's what's really important here, that the Supreme Court created this idea that super PACs operating independently cannot be corrupting influences on politicians. And there's plenty of examples like the one you just mentioned. I mean, go back to the Menendez case, Bob Menendez case in 2015, where what he was charged with, and that particular case ended in a mistrial, but what was documented was that Menendez was essentially trading favors for donations to a super PAC that was supporting him. So this whole idea that these super PACs that can accept unlimited money from billionaires and corporations, the idea that they are, non-corrupting and can't have any influence over politicians because they're technically on paper independent of those politicians, is just utterly and completely absurd.
I mean, look, if there were real journalists in the country like David, everybody would acknowledge the most obvious thing in the world. Super PACs can't be corrupting? I don't know anything more mental than that, right? So we would all know that the Supreme Court is driving towards this. We'll get to why they've been driving towards this for decades in a minute as well. But first, tell us the connection of JD Vance to this story.
Yeah, well, again, JD Vance is spearheading the case to get rid of these limits. He's spearheading this case that would get rid of the campaign finance limits. And you mentioned the other case, and it's important to remember there's two tracks of this. We call it in our book the Master Plan. We just released this book called Master Plan, which is the 50-year crusade to deregulate campaign finance laws, but also to destroy anti-bribery laws, right? There's campaign finance laws is one track of court cases, and then anti-bribery laws is a whole other track. In the last Supreme Court term, there was that case that some people might have heard about where there was a mayor of a local Indiana town who had been convicted of corruption because he gave a municipal contract to a government contractor, and soon after the government contractor gave him $10,000. He was convicted on corruption. The Supreme Court intervened to overturn the corruption conviction, saying that the sequence of events means that the payment, the $10,000 payment, wasn't a bribe. It was a gratuity. I mean, I'm not making this up. It sounds insane, but that's literally what the Supreme Court ruled. Now you have at the court a case where a former Democratic city council person from Cincinnati, who's been convicted on corruption charges, who had also been, by the way, it's important to know, pardoned by Donald Trump in that case. So he's already pardoned. This is the first example of a case being pushed forward, being appealed, even though the person has already been pardoned. And the case is trying to overturn the conviction. It was about campaign contributions made and the local city council person delivering a municipal development deal to donors who had a vested interest, a financial interest in that deal. And what's important to understand is that that the argument being made at the court now is for an appeal here is they cite that story of Donald Trump reportedly asking fossil fuel donors for $1 billion of campaign money and promising them that if they do that and he wins, he will deliver the fossil fuel industry big favors. This appeal cites that as essentially proof that the kind of a quid pro quo corruption that exists all throughout politics is now so endemic, that this transactional nature of politics is so endemic that it should not be considered a prosecutable crime. That's where we are. And you can imagine if this appeal moves forward, the question of can you literally trade in an explicit way campaign contributions for government favors, that may end up being not only normalized, but effectively legalized by the Supreme Court.
So just to review here, as if corporations giving unlimited money to super PACs wasn't bad enough, now corporations might be able to give unlimited money directly to parties, politicians, just shredding it completely. But on top of that, forget campaign contributions, now you can bribe politicians after the fact, okay? Now, I'm not saying I'm going to pass this oil bill that's going to get you billions of dollars in return for a bribe. I didn't say that at all. I just passed it. Oh, you gave me $1 million afterwards, and I put it in my pocket. That is actually
well, but Cenk,
currently perfectly legal.
You're actually understating it. because Trump, according to all the reports back then that haven't been denied, Trump was saying, help me with $1 billion and I will deliver for you, right? It was like very, and here's the thing that I think is important to remember. Donald Trump is like a pathological liar statement to statement, but I do think the one benefit, if you can call it that, of the way Donald Trump carries himself is that he is effectively brazenly honest at the vibe level in the sense of how he sees government as a fundamentally transactional endeavor. Like, I don't think he's trying to hide the fact in any real way that he sees government as a fundamentally transactional operation, and that he himself and his family, in sort of his view, is entitled to some of the winnings. And I think the reason I think that's a good thing that's sort of out there for everyone to see, and that he's essentially honest about it in a lot of ways, is that you can no longer deny it, right? You don't have to convince anyone anymore that what's going on is absurdly corrupt. We're beyond that. I think everybody can see that now, and thanks to Donald Trump, there's no pretense. The question is whether we're going to allow that to be normal and acceptable and legal or not. That's the question that hasn't yet been answered.
Yeah, so I'm going to get to how Democrats are in answering that question in a second. But look, first I'll make a quick point here. You said everybody sees the corruption now. Asterisks, except every national media reporter. Which is hilarious, right? So, okay, but last thing on that particular story. It's super strange for Trump to find a random councilman in Cincinnati from the other party and pardon him, unless he's trying to send a message. I want it to be okay to bribe government officials. Has anybody ever given an alternate explanation as to why he would help this rando in a case of bribery?
Well, and just adding to that, I mean, this council person is being represented by Trump's former Solicitor General. And there are a lot of conservative groups that have been part of this master plan to deregulate campaign finance laws and to kill off anti-bribery laws. There are a lot of those groups that are supporting this appeal. So I think it's important you're right to say, this probably isn't just about one municipal development deal in one mid-sized city in Ohio. This is about trying to create a larger precedent to make it harder and harder, if not impossible, to prosecute bribery. That is what I think this master plan is truly aiming for. It's the holy grail that they are looking for. And the question then becomes, well, why? Right, and in publishing this book and in hearing from people, there's always the question, well, why? Who would want to really legalize corruption? And I think when you take it all the way back to the 1970s, because they're trying to dismantle the post-Watergate campaign finance and transparency laws and anti-bribery laws. The question is, why would they want to do that? And the answer is very clear. Was originally laid out in the so-called Powell memo, written by soon-to-be Supreme Court Justice Lewis Powell. He issued this memo saying that essentially democracy had created a government that was essentially too responsive to what the people wanted, and that corporations and the rich needed to better invest in politics to control the outcomes of public policy. And so the way to do that is, if you have a problem with a functioning one person, one vote democracy, if you're an oligarch or a corporation and that one person, one vote democracy is creating policies that perhaps benefit lots and lots of people, but you don't like because it threatens your power and your wealth, what you have to try to do is convert the system into a $1, one vote oligarchy. And so eliminating campaign finance laws and anti-bribery laws is a way to essentially subvert the will of what the public wants. And subverting that will is the desire of the people, the relatively few people who have most of the power and the wealth.
Yeah, I don't think it's complicated at all. Look, the Powell memo is a central part of David's book, Master Plan. It's also a central part of my book, Justice is Coming. Why? Because they just lay it out for you right there, and then they execute it for the next 50 years. You go back and it's word for word. Things like cancel culture and hiding behind phrases like freedom. I mean, he said all the tricks in one memo. And basically the essence of what he's telling the Chamber of Commerce at the time is, duh, you have all the money, why don't you use it to seize power? And so, you believe in the power of ads, right? That's why you guys all run ads. So why don't we get into media? Why don't we get into politics? And most of all, let's capture the Supreme Court. And why would you want to make bribery legal? Well, if you're the one with all the money, bribery is going to be beautiful for you. You're going to get to buy all the government and then have them give you 10 times as much money. So anyone who starts out with that money advantage would normally naturally try to seize power in the way that corporations in this country have. And when we're revolting, we're not revolting against Ted Cruz or Pete Buttigieg. They're just servants of the corporate class, right? We're actually rebelling against corporate rule in aggregate. So which then now, we've talked about the Republicans and Trump and Vance and those guys. Now let's turn to the Democrats real quick. You wrote a piece, it's the corruption stupid, which I think is, probably the sentence I said most often in my book. Democrats have a chance to revive their party and save American democracy. Will they take it? Okay, how'd you answer that one, David?
Well, look, there are plenty of ways to combat this problem. And I think folks think, as I said, we're at this moment where corruption seems endemic. The question is whether we're going to allow it to remain endemic and just say that, corruption isn't corruption anymore, it's just politics. And the good news is that there are a lot of ways that this can be stopped, and there are a lot of people working on trying to roll this back. And I take solace in the fact that when you look at the history of how campaign finance laws and anti-bribery laws were deregulated and weakened, you understand that it was a plot. It was a plan. I mean, this is not a conspiracy theory. This was a conspiracy. I mean, it actually happened and is happening, and they wrote it all down and they executed it. And frankly, I don't think the people who executed it would deny it. So what I take solace in is the fact that it wasn't inevitable. It wasn't a force of nature. It was executed by specific people with a specific set of plans, and it can be rolled back. So I think when you look at, for instance, what is happening in Montana as one example. In Montana, a very red state, a group of people on both the right and left have come together to try to put a ballot measure on the ballot to change the state's corporate code, because corporations are artificial entities created by states, to change the state's corporate code to say corporations have every power that they currently have except for one power. They can no longer spend money on elections and politics. And that essentially would pull out a foundational building block of Citizens United. And it would create a template for other states to do the same kind of thing. You had a situation in Arizona, a purple state, where Arizona voted 70% to essentially end, it was a ballot measure, to end dark money, to require transparency. You had a situation in Maine, another purple state, that Maine just passed a ballot measure to effectively end super PACs, to use the Supreme Court's own precedent in a case, the federal court's own precedent to test the Citizens United case at the Supreme Court to say that yes, campaign contributions to super PACs can be limited. And then, of course, the ultimate thing that can be done, to my mind, the true holy grail of fixing this is public financing of elections. New York City, Zoran Mamdani, I would argue the primary way he was able to win that election was because he was in a system that provides an 8-to-1 public match, a real robust public financing system of elections that allows qualifying candidates access to public money instead of having to beg oligarchs for money that inevitably comes with the expectation of legislative favors. Zoran Mamdani was able to run a well-financed, competitively financed campaign, even as the oligarchs spent huge money against him. And without that public money, I don't don't think he would have had much of a campaign at all. There are various states and various cities that already have some public financing on their books. Those systems can be expanded. All the other states and cities that don't have them, it can be implemented there. Public financing, by the way, is not being challenged at the Supreme Court. In other words, it fits under the paradigm of Citizens United. So there isn't really a threat that the Supreme Court is going to intervene and end public financing systems that exist or that are created. To me, understanding what happened in New York through the prism of that system, that victory, understanding that. I mean, people want to say, it was Mamdani's message, it was his campaign ads, it was his slick videos. All of that played a part. But without competitive money, I don't think he would have been able to run a campaign. And that should be the takeaway. When you want to say, how do we get other outside the system candidates to be able to run real campaigns against oligarchy? To me, that is the real answer.
Yeah, so I'm very encouraged by what happened in New York. I totally agree with you that 8-to-1 public financing made all the difference. Encouraged by what happened in Maine. In fact, our Operation Hope volunteers phone banked for that and helped at the urging of Professor Larry Lessig. On the other hand, I'm a little less optimistic about the Montana thing. We did talk to Professor Lessig about that at the end of last week, and he came on to talk about it. And so there's some issues there, but mainly, David, the problem is that Montana already passed a great law 100 years ago, and then the Supreme Court knocked it down, right? And then South Dakota passed a great campaign finance law, anti-corruption law a while back in a ballot measure. And then the legislators were like, so what? We're just getting rid of it. We don't care what the voters think. So it's super tough to do it state by state, in my opinion. But if we did public financing and we got a constitutional amendment, that would, of course, make all the difference. But to the core of the question about the Democrats, so there are some great Democratic policies, and that's why I'm a Democrat to begin with on getting rid of money in politics, but they never actually do them, right? And so today we did the story about Center for American Progress still has Larry Summers advising them on what might be Project 2029. Oh my God, I mean, Larry Summers is patient zero for neoliberal corporate rule. So I don't think Democratic establishment has learned a single lesson. Do you?
I basically agree with you on that. I mean, I think the Democratic Party, as you and I have talked about before, the Democratic Party is constantly trying to find a middle ground between what people want and what the donors who are ruining people's lives want. And the reason why Democrats often sound so incoherent is because there really isn't a way to satisfy what voters want and what the people who are ruining voters' lives want. Like you can't square that circle. It is in a sense a zero-sum game. The current Democratic Party. I think there's a real chance for change here. This is the first time in my life, and I went back and I looked back at polls. This is the first time in my adult life that there has been such anger among Democratic voters aimed at the Democrats' current leadership. There is no precedent for that. When you look at polling numbers, there's no precedent for that in our lifetime. And I think that anger and outrage is right on. I think it's legitimate, and I think it opens up the possibility for genuine change. I thought there was that possibility back in 2007, 2008. I wrote a book called The Uprising, where I said there's this anger in politics, and the next era of politics is going to be a competition to harness that anger. And if it's going to go either in a center-left direction or a far-right direction, and I had hope at that point that it could go into a center-left, non-far-right direction. I think those hopes were sort of youthful, naive hopes. We're now, 17 years, 18 years later, and now I look at the polls about how Democratic voters feel about their own leadership, which is not how they were feeling about their own leadership back then. There was still affinity among Democratic voters, liberal voters, for the Democratic leadership. Now that dynamic has changed. And to me, that is the best political news of this era, because it creates the possibility to finally overthrow the current leadership of the Democratic Party, overthrow them at the polls, overthrow them inside of the party. And we have not experienced that in our lifetime. I mean, it may not happen, but those are the conditions for real change.
Yeah, and now they're finally, well, there's at least one, and maybe a couple of Democrats who are actually fighting the good fight, like Ro Khanna, right? So he's not like doing fake fighting. He's actually trying to help on all of these issues and get money out of politics and turn the party around, et cetera. So,
and can I add one thing? I think it's important for everyone to understand that this is not going to change because of the goodness of a couple of politicians' hearts. I mean, you mentioned Ro Khanna, who I think is doing great work. The way I think this is going to change is that enough politicians inside the Democratic Party will see a political opportunity for themselves to be the champions of change. You know, I have kind of a view of politicians as amoral machines, as levers of power, if you will. And that if you change the dynamic and the conditions around them, enough of them will, in their own ambitious way, because they are all ambitious, they will see a self-interest in championing better change, real constructive change. And so I guess what I'm saying is this is less about one or another politician who happens to be, have a good person or have decent ideas, and more about how do you create the conditions for them to feel that they have to change. Essentially, to use the Martin Luther King analogy, the politicians are essentially thermometers. It's up to the rest of us to be the thermostat.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We're a little bit out of time, but I'm gonna go to one more question anyway, because we talked about the Lewis Powell memo. He also talked about the media. Part of the reason the Democratic politicians didn't do it before is because mainstream media didn't give them permission. So if they talked about how the rest of the politicians were corrupt, mainstream media would have ripped their face off, rhetorically, politically, et cetera, right? And so now people are concerned about Barry Weiss going over to CBS and taking it in a corporate direction. Is that a new phenomenon, David?
It's not a new phenomenon. I'm glad, and what we wrote about came out of our book. So the Powell memo happens, and people, I think they know, they've heard about the Powell memo. But there's been this theory that the Powell memo was kind of like a 1970s version of a Reddit thread that kind of went viral and then disappeared. But what we uncovered are documents showing how the conservative movement operationalized it. A series of documents showing that the Chamber of Commerce created literally a task force on implementing the Powell memo. And among the members of those task forces were some of the most powerful people in corporate America, including some of the top executives at the largest media corporations in the country. And they had meetings detailing what they were doing to influence those media entities. CBS's own president, according to a letter that we obtained and published in our book, CBS's own president wrote a letter saying not only does he support the goals of the Powell memo, but that he believed that CBS News was becoming too sympathetic, essentially, to the opponents of Lewis Powell, too sympathetic to those who were critiquing free market capitalism, and that he was, quote, this is a quote, working to correct the situation at CBS News. Now, I bring that up because I think then you see the through line here in what's happening, not only at CBS News with Barry Weiss, but throughout the entire media. It is an admission that the owners of media understand that their media entities are political weapons for ownership's cause. And I think it's important to be media literate about that. It doesn't mean that there's no good journalism inside of these media outlets, but it means that media outlets, the biggest media outlets in the world, are often used as political instruments for the people who control and own those outlets. And I think now I don't think anybody would really, in any serious way, anybody would deny that. I mean, I remember back, and you probably remember this too, 5 years ago, Bernie Sanders cracked a joke about how the Washington Post wasn't all that nice to him, and maybe that had something to do with Jeff Bezos owning the paper, and he was vilified for saying that. I don't think anybody would deny anymore that the owners of media companies are political actors who often influence their political properties. And again, I would say this: I'm glad that there's less pretense, because at least now we can speak honestly about what's actually going on.
Yeah, and look, I'm in favor of transparency. So we do a show and we say it's progressive, it's populist, but these days nonpartisan, and you see us criticize Republican Democrats. And we always stick to the facts. So you can stick to the facts and have a perspective, and that's more honest. What mainstream media does is they cover their perspective. Not only that, they then pretend that they're the only objective ones. So
they pretend the voice of God. They pretend to be the voice of God. They pretend to have no ideology, while the ideology is baked inside of what stories they're selecting, what they're looking to preference, what they're looking to eye roll at.
100%. And so they privilege their own pro-corporate, pro-status quo position as if it's objective, when it's not even close to objective, when they believe preposterous things. Well, whether they believe it or not is a different question, but they say preposterous things like politicians are not affected by the millions of dollars given to them by corporate donors. I mean, how could you call yourself a journalist and say such a preposterous thing, right? Yet almost everyone in mainstream media says that. So, all right, well, we're trying to break it down for you guys. David, we appreciate you coming on. Everybody check out The Lever. So that's where they do great reporting. And check out Master Plan. That's the new book that shows you exactly how the corporate world took over our government and now runs it. And you see it from its very beginning to how they executed it, as David explained, to the infinite corruption that we have now. And that's exactly why we need a revolution, a political one, to get our government back. All right, thank you, brother, appreciate it.
Thank you, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. All right, guys, so for the members, stay right here. I'm gonna do a quick couple of stories about my time in media and a couple of times that bosses in the media companies I worked for gave me a little wink and a nudge. Hey, you better go in this direction instead of that direction. They're telling stories, so we'll do that for the members now.